Greetings. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Hope you're having a fantastic evening. On tonight's live stream, we conclude this book study of the Cosmic Doctrine, the final chapter. The afterthoughts. So I hope you're doing well tonight. Let me know if the audio is coming through clearly before we begin. Good to see each and every one of you here. Saturday night, you know how we do it. Peace and greetings to all my favorite people in the universe. So let's get started. Let's get started with the afterthoughts. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Designed to serve. Peace and greetings. Chicano, peace and welcome. Zero the Hero, welcome, welcome. Coop TGS, peace. I just saw you guys over at my Gnosis's live stream. I mean, obviously. Good stuff. Pig 4159. It's been a minute since I've seen you. Welcome. Rose of Flame. Greetings, greetings, my friend. Mothra 53. Welcome. Welcome. Dr. Lakeith. Peace and greetings, my friend. So let's get started with this, shall we? Leah, welcome. Hope you're having a great evening. All right. And also, before we get started, for those of you present and also for those of you watching the replay, a lot of people have been asking since my last live stream. My latest class is still open. If you're interested in getting that, being a part of that, we will begin very soon. It involves recorded lessons as well as bi-weekly meetings that we're having. Bi-weekly meetings where we can share these experiences that we're having with our development of magic. And also, if you have questions and need some clarification, I can help you with that face to face. So if you're interested in that, let me know. There will be a link in the description. So let's get to this. Afterthoughts, Cosmic Doctrine. The additional material set out here has the same authority as the body of the work. So we're talking about this chapter here, but was communicated some years after it. This was written after the rest of the text. While it has in many instances a specific reference to certain chapters, it is not here given with that reference to those chapters, since it has also a general reference to the teaching as a whole and provides a useful elucidation of the general matter in the book. Generally speaking, it refers more to the first 20 chapters of the work than to the latter. But of course, the more the book is understood as a whole, the more useful will the additional material be. Each cosmic atom has within itself forces of two rays, which set up the primal vortex, though later it went out along the path of one ray only. The two-ray forces are the positive and negative factors in the vortex. The negative, or latent, representing a sort of subconsciousness. Examination of the ray type of an individual would call for sidereal astrology, a far more complicated and deep astrology than astrology as now practiced. The Lords of Flame and the Lords of Mind do not meet upon the planes in the progress of the first three swarms. So remember, of course, the first three swarms You've got the Lords of Flame, the Lords of Mind, the Lords of Form. Those were the first three swarms of consciousness that inhabited, formed and inhabited the vessels of the material planes. After they came through and shaped everything and did their thing, much, much later did consciousnesses of the level of you and I come about. Wayne M., peace and greetings. Sunshine Chick, always good to see you. Welcome, welcome. Honey Brown, welcome, welcome. Peace. Hope you're having a good day. So, of course, the first three swarms, as said, the Lords of Flame, Lords of Mind, and Lords of Form. Mo man, peace and greetings. Peace, peace. Hope you're doing well. So the Lords of Flame and the Lords of Mind do not meet upon the planes in the progress of the first three swarms. And again, they don't meet in the progress of the first three swarms because the Lords of Flame comes through first, right? And the Lords of Mind come through after them. So they don't cross paths. They just miss each other. But there is a process at a later date whereby a Lord of Flame can, as it were, fuse with a Lord of Mind, thus becoming, to all intents, a Lord of Mind. The process is very difficult to describe. There takes place a kind of absorption, so to speak, somewhat comparable to the coalescence of an individuality, that's a higher self, with a highly developed personality, lower self, in a human incarnation. Interesting. Somewhat comparable, but not the same. A Lord of Mind who chooses to carry on certain work for a Lord of Flame absorbs the experience of the Lord of Flame, somewhat in the manner that an individuality absorbs the experience of a personality. But in this case, the comparison is reversed, since the Lord of Mind corresponds to the personality, absorbing the experience of a Lord of Flame, corresponding to the individuality. Emperor Rex, peace and greetings. Rose of Flame says, I'm out and about, but thank you for real, Travis, for all you do. Your teachings are a blessing. I appreciate that. Thank you. We'll be here for sure. My Gnosis in the building. Peace and greetings, my brother in darkness. My brother in darkness. Pig says, I ended up developing several tulpas related to D&D while exploring the microcosm, and they became my pagan guides to the microcosm as a structured hierarchy to act as role models for my identity. Interesting. And what did they teach you about yourself? What did these mirrors show you? I am that I am. Peace, peace. Framestar Films. My brother from across the pond. Welcome, welcome. Haha. So interesting here. She talks about a Lord of Mind fusing with the Lord of Flame. And if you recall, the Lords of Flame came through first, and they're the closest thing that we could probably consider as archangels. These layers of consciousness that came through existence and really gave shape to reality as we know it and as we don't know it, right? They really gave shape, which is what makes them categorically an archangel. Not because it's a person in robes with wings, but because these were early, early entities, early forms of consciousness that formed the groundwork and the blueprint for existence, right? Shaping laws like gravity and nuclear laws and things like that. This is what the archangels or the lords of flame did as they came through. They shaped reality. They were the first ones through. The lords of mind came after them and began connecting the dots and making things more cohesive. And basically, as these waves came through, they basically made reality, they synthesized reality and made it more compatible with the forms of consciousness that were to follow after them. It's like each wave of life that came through molded and crafted and shaped reality in a way that the next wave that comes through would have an easier time, so to speak. So if you notice, by the time you were born, everything in existence was already laid out and put together, right? Everything in existence was already built and taken care of so cohesively and so detailed and so intimately that you really don't have to do anything but breathe and pay taxes, right? But you think thousands of years ago, tens of thousands of years ago, reality was not like this. If you were to incarnate thousands of years ago, you'd probably find yourself having an extremely difficult time. But she talks about the Lords of Flame and the Lords of Mind having the ability to fuse. They never quite meet on their rounds, but there is a point at a later date where they can fuse together. And she describes this as comparable to, not exactly similar, but comparable to the higher self of a person fusing with the lower self, right? The higher self fusing with the lower self and absorbing all the knowledge, wisdom, experience, and information. And they just kind of come together as one. So I'll read that again. The Lords of Flame and the Lords of Mind do not meet upon the planes in the progress of the first three swarms, but there is a process at a later date whereby a Lord of Flame can, as it were, fuse with a Lord of Mind, thus becoming to all intents a Lord of Mind. The process is very difficult to describe. There takes place a kind of absorption, so to speak, somewhat comparable to the coalescence of an individuality with a highly developed personality in a human incarnation. Somewhat comparable, but not the same. A Lord of Mind who chooses to carry on certain work for a Lord of Flame absorbs the experience of the Lord of Flame, somewhat in the manner that an individuality absorbs the experience of a personality. But in this case, the comparison is reversed, since the Lord of Mind corresponds to the personality, absorbing the experience of a Lord of Flame, corresponding to the individuality, and goes forth as a Lord of Mind with the far off contact of a Lord of Flame, still working behind him. You know, last night I had a question about ascended masters, right? Like the whole concept of an ascended master doesn't quite make sense to me. As far as my understanding, you reach a certain level of consciousness, and down here in the earth plane, people think that an ascended master, instead of continuing forward, they come back to help, right? They come back to help ease the suffering of humanity. And I don't quite get that because, as far as I understand, once you get to a certain point of understanding, you realize that there is no suffering, there is no humanity, there's no humanity to help. So it seems like a contradiction to me. However, reading this, I think maybe the gears are starting to turn, and I might start to see some sense behind that concept. As always, I don't think that there's an error in the information. I think the error comes from what people share with each other. We're usually wrong about a lot of things. And instead of blaming ourselves for being incorrect, we blame the information. But, anyways, let's continue. Mothra says, could three lords correspond to spirit, individuality, and personality? I would say no, not exactly, right? We're talking about primordial forces. When she talks about these lords of form, flame, and mind, these are forces that basically see Prakriti, see existence, see the matrix in this early time as this unformed body of just stuff, right? Just unseparated mass, just clunks of energy, clunks and clumps and collections of energy. And what these first three swarms did was they came through and they shaped everything. They carved out stuff, right? Like I said, they made the laws of gravity and stuff. They made the beginnings of what we call planets. Not quite planets, but the laws that would come to create planets, right? Centrifugal force and stuff like that. The fact that things have to revolve around a center. Um, just basic concepts of the fundamentals of reality. That's what they came through and they created the source code. And each one that came through after them made it a little bit more specific, a little bit more precise, and a little bit more palatable. They came through and carved reality out, so to speak. Now, what you're talking about as far as spirit, individuality, and personality, that came much later. Much later. You could kind of say, just for a lack of better words, this is not literal, but lack of better words, you could say after all that was carved out, we could say that there was a giant body of consciousness that we call the sun, and the sun, in order to continue its lesson, fell asleep and dreamed within, and its within dream, it separated itself into countless entities, and those countless entities began to incarnate in places like planet Earth, moving around wearing the glove of a human body, right? But ultimately, all these little gloves and toys of humanity are masks and costumes for this fragmented spirit of the logos. And all those fragmented spirits are portions of this ultimate being. So it's learning through expressing all of its facets. That's closer to what you would call the spirit, individuality, and personality. That's local. These first three swarms that came through, they created the game itself to even be played. You know. Let me know if that makes sense. Coop TGS says, I heard a guru say that this was the lesson that even Christ had to learn. It's good, but not necessary to save others. Right, right. And I'm not gonna jump to conclusions because I know that there's a lot of shit that I don't know, right? But just based on what I understand, the concept of ascended masters returning to help humanity, it doesn't make clean sense to me. But I'm open to understanding what it might mean, right? Because even in the human incarnation, you can get to a point and realize that a lot of what we experience is illusory and self-inflicted and most definitely exaggerated. And also, as someone pointed out last night in the class, I believe it was Laura, a lot of the confusion also stems from the human perspective. We are not ascended masters, so we don't know what the fuck they do. We can only guess and assume. So, like I said, the error is mostly in human interpretation. We probably um, assume, oh, they've come back to help us, right? They come back to save us from our suffering. A human said that. A person who's suffering said that, and they may have had the experience of that suffering being relieved. It's anything. Who knows? But before blaming the info, let me make sure that I'm correct, right? Let me make sure that I'm not incorrect. You dig? Mothra says, okay, yeah, I keep forgetting how primordial this material is. Yeah, all good. Left hand path, darkness. Elisha Eternal, peace. Elisha says, still trying to catch up. The Cosmic Doctrine is such a hearty meal. It is. It's a hearty meal for a long time. You can fill your cabinets with it, and it will still do the trick. Zero says, I think ascended masters are souls that are making another type of work to keep the simulation going, because human consciousness maybe is not getting the there is no suffering understanding. I could see that. I could see that. Gigano says, shout out to Alora. May everything she do be blessed 100 times. I agree with that. I agree with you. I co-sign it. Signed, sealed, delivered. Wayne says the author Kreider mentioned to beware of ascended masters because even they can have personal agendas. Who knows? Yeah, yeah, and that was another point that we had too. Like, we can go deep into it, but we won't because we got this to do. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And John Kreider is a very knowledgeable writer who I've gotten a lot of information from, useful information. Absolutely, they could very well also be quote unquote stuck in their place because of things that they've done or haven't done. Yeah, that's a very valid and strong point that I agree with as well. I mean, hell, wouldn't you tell people that you're here to help them? They don't know the difference, anyways. Let's continue. Especially since these so called ascended masters need human contacts to do their work. I mean, hell, we got ascended masters translating this information to Dion Fortune, transmitting this information to Dion Fortune. So, you know, those points of consciousness at that level do require, to some degree, points of consciousness in the incarnated level. So, why not say you're here to help everyone? Who would turn that down? MC Maestro, peace and welcome. Peace and welcome. But yeah, not that any of that is like super important. It's just something interesting that I was thinking about. It's really none of our business. Most of us will not be at a point to communicate with any ascended master. And if we are, there's a huge chance that we wouldn't be aware of it anyways. So, back to this. Many of the Lords of Flame are what we now call the archangelic forces. See? The archangelic forces. Others guide certain conditions in the universe and have a special contact with the solar logos. All right, so Mothra, that right there, right? We're talking about these Lords of Flame and whatnot. Many of the Lords of Flame are what we now call the archangelic forces. Others guide certain conditions in the universe. Like I said, the laws and the framework of reality as we know it and as we don't know it. And they have special contact with the solar logos. So remember I said about the sun going into a deep dream, or what we know of as the sun, which is actually something much more, having a deep dream and this whole experience being within that dream. So they have a special contact with the solar logos. It is these latter, the ones that have the special contact with the solar logos, it is these latter which, so to speak, steep certain lords of mind in their experience and pass their influence into them, thus working through them. The lords of flame all have an especially strong logoidal contact, and some were what might be termed sent forth again after the first swarm had finished its work. Damn, right back out. Sheesh. Sheesh. It can be of special benefit to meditate on the three primal swarms because that part of the book which deals with them was set down in a necessarily very approximate manner suited to the average intellect. It is important to bear in mind that all that I said is only an approximation, and far more than a merely intellectual appreciation can be gained through meditation on the first three swarm. The material in the Cosmic Doctrine is capable of immense expansion. Expansion indeed, beyond the present limits of human understanding. Elashi Eternal says, Lords of Flame, Mind, or Form, which one you feel like? I would say neither. That is beyond my experience. Far beyond my experience. We are but hairless apes who can barely take care of ourselves, let alone shape the universe. We can barely take care of our basic needs, let alone shape the cosmos. I would say neither. The human experience is extremely limited to even think on terms like that, at least from what I understand. And I don't understand everything, so who knows? To try to put into comprehensible language and yet give something approaching an adequate delineation of the power and majesty of the three primal swarms is a difficult task indeed. To try to put into comprehensible language and yet give something approaching an adequate delineation of the power and majesty of the three primal swarms is a difficult task indeed. The description given in the body of the work conveys little idea of the mighty work undertaken and performed by those swarms. The mighty work, right? Those great waves of cosmic life which built the laws governing the universe, evolution, and man are of great importance at all times, and especially at the inception of a new age. Their influence remains behind in man and in the universe. And according as man is in touch with these primal beginnings, when his own life spark first entered manifestation, even so is the type of his individuality determined. That's your higher self, right? He cannot even now get away from those early stages of development because, as his essential self took on the influences and reacted to them in the formative stages of his evolution, so does each human being at this stage still carry the latent consciousness of those primal actions and reactions. He carries eternally the seed of his own beginning, even as the oak carries eternally the acorn with it. And as the acorn reacted to the soil in which it grew, as it received the air and the sun, in what measure its own growth was made. And it gradually cast off its outer shell and began to shoot and become an oak tree. So, in a sense, did man first begin to become man. Unapologetic black girl, peace and greetings. Welcome, welcome. blueprint is within the seed. The cause is bundled up in the effect. The effect is bundled up in the cause. Sly Artist, peace, peace. Welcome. Mothra asks, Travis, do you still agree that the three lords represent the three gunas? I agree that any system of three will reflect the three gunas. Because when you think of a system, it's a comprehensive whole. And if you were to, let's say, if you were to take a comprehensive whole and split it in half equally, you'll naturally find positive and negative. You'll naturally find masculine, feminine. You'll naturally find the two complementary opposites. Now, if you split it in three, you will naturally find the relationship between the three gunas, right? So it's a natural. Anytime you see, that's what a system is. A system is one thing broken into parts, and those parts play a role, right? Those parts are going to reflect the working pieces, right? And also, if you see a whole broken into quarters, into fours, what are you going to see? You're going to see the four elements, right? Doesn't matter if it's the Ninja Turtles. It doesn't matter, any fours, you're going to see the four elements. Any threes, you're going to see the three gunas. Any twos, you're going to see the duality, the polar duality of positive, negative, masculine, feminine, whatever words you want to call it. But you understand that that's what makes it a system, because the parts of the puzzle represent an aspect of the whole. So, yes, to answer your question, yes. Anytime it's a system of three, you're going to see the three gunas: active, passive, and neutral. Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva. Fire and water separated by air. And also, that's the other concept. The Last Eternal says, Travis May just taught me whenever there's three, there's a hidden fourth. Right, whenever there's three, you're going to see the hidden fourth. When there's four, there's a hidden fifth, etc., 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 etc. Because, like I said, if we were to look at the three, it's fire and water separated by air. The hidden fourth is the element of earth, which is the culmination of earth, of water, fire, and air. Right? Whenever there's four, there's a hidden fifth, which would be the Akashic element. It just continues. Whenever there's two, it's that hidden third. So, and that goes back to what you said. The effect is bundled up in the cause. The cause is bundled up in the effect. That's what makes this a hologram. Not that reality is inside of somebody's computer system somewhere. It's a hologram because the whole of the system is contained in every little part. No matter how you reflect the part, you will always find the whole. It's, it's easy, real easy, and simple too. It's simple too. Cosmic Puzzle Piece says, Storm came through, light's been out for hours now. Perfect for a book read. Oh, wow. I think it's a healthy thing to have some time, separate from our electronics and our distractions. I just hope that your food is going to be okay. That's always the most annoying part to me, when that fridge goes out during a power outage. Mm. All right, all right. Let's continue. We got a lot of highlighted parts in this portion. So the seed is in the oak tree, right? The oak tree is in the seed. When it reacts with the soil, the oak tree comes shooting out of the ground. When it receives the air and the sun and all that good stuff. As a man reacted to the various planes through which he passed in these primal stages of the life spark, and even then, there was a measure, however small, of individual reaction. Even so is that man today. As the spark came down the plains, gathered substance from each plane, and then returned up again, he met other sparks doing the same thing. And so again is it in his life today. In this mass of sparks on its first descent of the plains, there were some which formed a smaller mass within the whole, touching each other more than other sparks or groups of sparks in the whole. Thus did certain special reactions, friendships, as it were, begin in the primal stages. Look at that. Look at that. Me and Mariah go back like babies and pacifiers. And in later days of evolution, those same sparks, clothed with matter of all planes passed through, again met those others equally clothed with matter of all planes passed through, which had first contacted them in the primal stages. In passing through the planes, the matter or substance of each plane was interwoven into the inner vehicles of man, and in time built the different forms or vehicles we know now by various names. In other words, the astral body, the mental body, etc. And these bodies have also certain subdivisions. The great planetary spheres through which each atom and divine spark passed in the course of evolution also had a certain type of influence over it. And in a way, this is the basis of astrology, though the roots of that study are largely lost and forgotten. Astrology cannot be applied nowadays as the ancient races conceived it because of change among the heavenly bodies. And man himself is changing also. In his passage down the plains, the evolving being came into contact with the great planetary powers, which still exercise some control over him, though he may not be aware of it. For he has matter within his makeup which retains a form of contact with those great planetary powers, and their influence on his body, mind, and karma still remains at very primitive levels. For example, the force described as the Great Mother still remains the Great Mother of all living beings, and the degree to which a modern man can consciously become aware of this contact is of importance to him. The great laws of the universe were made long before what we call man had evolved sufficiently to come down the plains in the same manner as had come down the great atoms and group forces, which in the beginning built the universal powers. The group souls of these latter are behind what we call the great archetypes. And with these archetypes, esoteric students can be much concerned. And as man eventually returns up the plains at the end of a chain of evolution, he reaches on another level his own beginnings. He becomes, as it were, a god, a type of logos in himself at the end of many evolutions, gathering together the great chains of experience, which will have made himself no longer the individual, but in a sense, a group from which other units of mind force emanate. For man begins as a group and individualizes out of the group as evolution goes on, and in the end has to return to his own group, which is then himself. Now, Rosa Flame, you had mentioned that you had been receiving similar inner revelation. One of the pieces of inner revelation that I've been receiving over the past weeks is this part right here, and how this could quite possibly, from my understanding, be a symptom of this eon of Horus, this eon of the child. She said, for a man begins as a group and individualizes out of the group as evolution goes on. and in the end has to return to his own group, which is then himself. We do start as group souls, right? These group intelligences, group consciousnesses that evolve together, right? Probably been friends before the earth was even a thing, before earth was even thought of, before the sun was even a thing, right? However, through this process of evolution, there comes a point where it's not about the group anymore. It's about the individualize, and it's all reflections, right? You got to like take this stuff literally, but not literally, like literally and figuratively and metaphor. Like you got to be able to play with concepts being true but also not true at the same time. You can't get stuck on think that everything is literal but everything is a metaphor. Like it's both and it's neither. Like your mind has to be flexible, pliable. You got to be able to play with information and squeeze it and then stretch it and twist it until the truth comes out. The truth is not what you heard, and it's not what you seen. The truth is not going to come to you through the five senses. It ain't nothing that you heard, seen, smelt, tasted, none of that. However, through those things, the truth is still there. It's there. You have to find it. It's not going to be given to you. I don't remember if I said this on these streams or just privately, but just to kind of summarize, one of the things that came to me was that how in the earlier times, right, everyone did stuff together and everyone had their role and their position, right? You knew that you were going to be a farmer. This guy over here knew that you were going to make the shoes and the clothes and shit. And this one over here was going to raise the kids. Like everybody had their role and their purpose. And you did that till you died. And that's how it was. That's how humanity as a whole was. No matter where you went across this earth, everybody had their thing to do. And activity and behavior is data and it's stored in the subtle planes. It's expressed from the subtle planes and it's also stored in the subtle planes. And I mean the astral plane, the etheric plane, the mental plane. So there's an archetype for the farmer, there's an archetype for the warrior, there's an archetype for the teacher, right? And when in those old days, when they say, hey, your father, your great grandfather was a teacher, your father was a teacher, you're going to be a teacher, they're pulling from that archetype. And perhaps the wise ones of that time could see the archetype in the individual. But long story short, after doing that for thousands of years, our societies begin to change. And as we evolve, that's no longer a job for one person only. Now you'll have an individual who does that and this and that, right? You have to fill several roles in the course of a day, in the course of a week. You're not just one thing all your life. You are a chef, right? You might also be a parent. You might also have to be a car repair person, right? You also have to be a fucking programmer. You have to be a social media marketer, content creator. There's so many different hats you have to wear. And that's what I mean. We're naturally evolving to the position where one person is everything. One person is all archetypes, right? People complain about, oh, the family unit's being destroyed. Father, mother, child is being destroyed. Well, what if that's evolution? What if the evolution is for the individual to be the father, mother, and child? Huh? Because that's where it's inevitably headed. The individual is becoming the everything. So you can take that and think about it. But that's one thing that I've been thinking about lately, especially with technology. Right, technology is and software and artificial intelligence is only accelerating that process. It's only accelerating that process. Father, mother, and child. The family unit is now the individual. This last line says, for man begins as a group and individualizes out of the group as evolution goes on, and in the end has to return to his own group, which is then himself. It only makes sense. Now you're a group soul. Evolution is not happening physically. The physical plane has evolved to its premium maximum state. There's no more physical evolution. That's a wrap. Evolution now is taking place on the subtle planes. You will eventually do what the sun is doing, and you will dream your own universe with your own laws and planets and whatnot. And the things, the lessons, the knowledge and wisdom that you've gathered from the material plane, you take that into your subtle planes. If you want to take an Epstein list into your own universe, then you do that. That's what you do. You won't find it in mine, but hey, that's what gets you going. Go on and do it. Pig asks, "Do you play D&D?" I do not play D&D. I think I've played it once, many, many, many years ago, but no, I don't. Trippy, absolutely. MC Maestro says that ending sounds like Mormonism. Hmm. Hmm. Elisha Eternal says already there. Absolutely. Diddy oil, right? Make sure that you include Diddy oil when you're creating your own simulation. Creating your own inner universe. Take that. All right, back to the show. Yeah, we're over here. So, behind that teaching, right? For man begins as a group and individualizes out of the group as evolution goes on, and in the end has to return to his own group, which is then himself. Behind that teaching is the collective principle or collective sense, which, partly or even wrongly understood, as it often is, can be found in certain political ideals and systems. This sense has a high ethical basis and strives so to form the character that all should act as one, should act as a team, and in a team, for it is the greatest, most intricate, and first divine law when properly understood. Nevertheless, unless the individual be developed to his highest, he cannot be part of the collective unit of divinity. Let me run that back real quick. Nevertheless, until the individual be developed to his highest, he cannot be part of the collective unit of divinity to which he should in the end return. And in each man is that which makes the Trinity, the three aspects of the manifesting Godhead. And these aspects are in his innermost spirit as its highest ethic. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we don't even know the half of it. Not these days. We don't even know the half of it. Mothra. So, when this evolution will have finished, the experience and matter of this plane, Earth, will be garnered up and will pass on to other evolutions in other planets. And some of its life forces will return again in another guise to this planet again. Always and forever. When a man dies, portions of his astral and etheric bodies are probably lost for a while to his individuality. But also, they often go to make up certain parts of the new astral and etheric bodies he will have in his new incarnation. Well, that's a relief, huh? When a man dies, portions of his astral and etheric bodies are probably lost for a while to his individuality. That's your soul, your higher self. But also, they often go to make up certain parts of the new astral and etheric bodies he will have in his new incarnation. That, in a few words, is what has happened all through evolution. The form is broken up and the parts are carried on to build up the form of the next type of life form. But it is not always known that particles of the denser vehicles, not the physical, but the astral and the etheric, the disintegrated astral and etheric bodies of people who have died, go to make up other personalities. The personalities may belong later to those individualities from whose former personalities the parts come. But it also happens that they may not. And individualities often have personalities composed of material which previously has been used in the vehicles of others. This sometimes can account for strange reactions between people in incarnation, so that it is not always necessary to look to meetings in previous lives to explain such reactions. See, it's not always about past life stuff, is it? Sometimes you run into somebody who has particles of the same astral body that you used to have at some point in your past. That's an interesting thought, isn't it? Interesting. Interesting. This sometimes can account for strange reactions between people in an incarnation, so that it is not always necessary to look to meetings in previous lives to explain such reactions. As the human being is in this way, so too are planets and other heavenly bodies. Planets contain portions of other planets and of other cosmic times and other evolutions built into their auras, just as this Earth is in the aura of the moon and has contact with many lunar particles of a former evolution. Life in its many sidedness is not simple by any means. It is woven into a vast pattern which only very advanced inner plane adepti can realize. And there is no pattern that is not in some way linked with all the rest. I like that. There is no pattern that is not in some way linked with all the rest. The planetary, well, let me read this note here. She mentioned planets contain portions of other planets and of other cosmic times and other evolutions built into their auras, just as the Earth is in the aura of the moon. Here's what she said about that. The present moon is not here referred to. She's not talking about Miss Luna up there or Mr. Luna, depending on which side of the planet you're on. In the east, it's a male, in the west, it's a female. But those terms are arbitrary when you expand past the human body, or the animal body, I should say. The present moon is not here referred to. The previous moon left behind its substance, which goes to make up the aura of the earth. Oh, how nice. The previous moon left behind its substance, which goes to make up the aura of the earth. This previous moon left much substance too, for the present moon and a great deal of its powers, right? We talk about the full moon and the new moon, and should I do a ritual on the new moon? It left a great deal of its powers or influences there, but many too of its primitive powers and certain very important factors remain with the earth and what esoterically is called the inner earth. And both these are as well joined into one huge aura, which is around both present moon and the earth. So an inner earth is referred to here. We're not talking about a special secret place that you have to flap to the North Pole to get inside of the Earth. When she talks about the inner Earth, we're talking about the Earth on a subtle plane, the etheric Earth, the astral Earth, the higher vibrational Earth, just like your inner self. You've got a subjective reality, don't you? You've got a reality that is subjective, that is quote unquote your inner self. You've also got an objective reality, which has to do with your five senses and the data thus collected and interpreted. And there's a connection between your inner reality and your outer reality. You have to live in both, but we are all adapted to living in both worlds at once. So when the inner earth is talked about, we can expand past a literal definition and also think about a metaphorical definition, a subjective definition. It would make sense too, because if this previous moon is very ancient and it was destroyed, and parts of its substance can be found to make up the aura of the earth and the moon itself, then that means that the astral body of that ancient moon still exists. In fact, it is what we call the astral body of earth and the moon. And that makes a sense in a lot of places. In Kabbalah, Kabbalistic cosmology, you'll see that the earth and the moon are intricately linked, just like the physical plane and the etheric plane are intricately linked, damn near inseparable. Damn near inseparable. Yesod and Malkuth are more than brother and sister, more than sister and sister. They are the same entity, one objective and one subjective. The high priestess experience is purely subjective, hence why she has one foot on the moon. The moon represents Yesod, the etheric plane. She's not to be found in Malkuth. She's to be found everywhere above Malkuth. That's why her foot rests upon the moon. But you already knew that. Framestar Film says fragments of the hidden fifth in all other fragments of the four elements in cycle. The inner element, right? Yeah. The fifth element, the inner element, found inside the other four. Black egg of Akash. Powerful symbol to meditate on if you do things like that. You'll find Akash and all the other elements. I believe that Ganesh is also a symbol of Akash. Let's continue. The planetary being evolves with the planet and corresponding plane. Its bodies up to the full complement of seven, and its content of consciousness increased with the arrival and departure of the various swarms. The activities of the swarms 4 through 7 were governed by the lords of the three primary swarms. Not until a planetary being had developed its full complement of bodies could it take a swarm through the full circuit of evolution. And not until then did the evolution begin of those sparks which became human beings as we understand them. So, again, this human experience came much later. Much later. During the descent of the first 7 swarms, the influence of the Logos remained paramount in the universe, and any unbalance resulting from the epigenetic activities of swarms 4 through 7 was immediately corrected so that the bodies of the planetary beings were not affected. After the full complement of 7 bodies has been acquired by the planetary being, however, the influence of the Logos does not fully correct any unbalance because influences from the now fully embodied planetary beings intervene. It is at this point that epigenetic factors lay the foundations of individual basic karma. Each planetary being is a stage behind the human evolution proceeding in its sphere, and thus acts as a drag upon it. What a drag. The 3 primary swarms can be aligned through the Logos with the 3 cosmic rings and with the essences of the 4 elements as follows. 1. The Lords of Flame, with their great stresses of movement, appertain to the ring cosmos and the element of fire. Well, who would have guessed that one? And Mothra, that would pertain to Rajas. Right? 2. The Lords of Form appertain to the ring chaos and to the primal earth water essence, the elements of earth and water. Obviously, that would be your Tamas, right? The Lords of Mind appertain to the ring pass not and to the element of air. That would be your Sattva. Individualism can reach a certain limit only and then is turned back onto a higher arc of collectivism. The limits of the human mind are a safeguard to the human race. That's one thing to remember. Everyone likes to think of this veil of Maya as a curse or some type of hindrance. But to be thoroughly honest, this veil of Maya, the limitation of the human mind, is mercy, it's divine mercy. The pig says, okay, so sulfur, mercury, or salt. Yeah, so that would also be a representation of these threes, right? What I've been calling the 3 gunas, Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva. It's the same thing. Whenever you see a system of 3, it's always the same thing. The 3 gunas: active, passive, and harmonized. Whenever you see the 3, that's what you're gonna see. And if you look hard enough, there will be a hidden 4th. But yeah, the words, the labels will change depending on what system, but the essence is the same. When it's split into threes, you're gonna get those three pieces. So yeah, the Lords of Mind appertain to the ring past not and to the element of air. Lords of Flame pertain to fire. The Lords of Form pertain to water, earth. She says individualism can reach a certain limit only, and then is turned back onto a higher arc of collectivism. The limits of the human mind are a safeguard of the human race. I'm gonna highlight that. I like that line. The limits of the human mind are a safeguard of the human race. There will come a time when the planetary spheres no longer hold any swarms passing downwards on the arc of evolution, arc of involution. When this occurs, the condition left behind by the last swarm will gradually dissolve, and for a space, nothing will happen. Then there will gradually come in a type of vortex from outside the plane, something that is seeking development, a kind of non human being, which will then go through an involution on a small scale on the empty plane. It will be a very simple kind of life, and it will eventually be drawn down to the physical plane. Only an experienced student of the subtler sides of esotericism could get any understanding of this form of life, something approaching a new type of elemental is as adequate a description as any. It should eventually have a connection with a divine spark of a much more limited range than the divine spark of the human beings. The subject is a very difficult one to put in words, even for approximate ideas. It is, in any case, very remote, but has interest. The life swarms 4 through 7 are the common origin of all humanity. In their passage down the plains, they have created the great archetypes of humanity and the basic human instincts. They represent a great soul, group soul. They represent a great group soul, a collective state from which individual man has gradually emerged. They have made that aspect of the universal laws which are portrayed in the God forms. Not until these laws had become established did man begin to emerge from this group state. His emergence corresponding with the acquisition by the planetary beings of their full complement of bodies, 7 in all. It is this group state in man that forms the collective unconscious of mankind, the archetypes of which, on the evolutionary arc, as distinct from the involutionary, man first contacts in dream vision. So, in other words, this portion of the collective unconsciousness you're going to find on the way up, not on the way down. In fact, they are formed on the way down and experienced on the way up. Right? Racial division, therefore, check my battery there. Battery's good. Racial division, therefore, came after this group state, emergence from which was the beginning of separateness. Community life, in its highest sense, remains a worthy ideal, for its principles seek to replace separateness with cooperation. These swarms gradually built what might be named the immediately pre human shape. Even at the time of the fourth swarm, it was still very embryonic. They are of especial interest since, on the manner of progression of the swarms, is based the beginnings of what are known as the root race types. Anybody ever heard of the root race types? In these pre human stages is to be found much of the history of man, while the gradual formation and development of the archetypes might be called planetary embryology. The human shape as we know it was established by the middle period of the seventh swarm. That's way late in the game, by the way. Way late in the game. So, throughout this whole book, humanity as we know it really didn't happen until, right? There's like 30, technically 32 chapters in this book. Humanity as we know it, because this is talking about the birth and evolution of the universe, right? Humanity as we know it didn't happen until like what, the last two chapters maybe. Now think about that, right? Humanity as we know it didn't occur until the very end of this book. Yet, right, here's the plot twist. Yet, you've been here since the beginning. You've been here since the beginning. I've been here since the beginning. Something to consider, right? We got to fight back. We got to come together. We got to do this and that. Ain't no we got to nothing. You are not a human. Never were and never will be. But that's for me to know and you to find out. They are of a special interest since on the manner of progression of the swarms is based the beginnings of what are known as the root race types. And as Coop TG has said, if you want to find out some information about the root races, look into theosophy. In these prehuman stages is to be found much of the history of man, while the gradual formation and development of the archetypes might be called planetary embryology. The human shape as we know it was established by the middle period of the seventh swarm, and the archetypal forms were due, in a sense, to the projected concept of the planetary being itself, which brings through additional concepts of another type than the logoidal concepts, though not necessarily conflicting with those concepts. The three activities referred to in chapter 3 as movement, light, and sound may be aligned with the three supernal sephira of the tree of life. There's our threes again. There's our threes again. Movement, light, and sound may be aligned with the three supernal sephira of the tree of life. The numbers assigned to the sephira are connected with the numbers of the corresponding atoms, i.e., of the faces. For example, the terrible simplicity of the three-sided atom and the use of 3 in Bina symbols are obviously related. The 4 threes of the tarot cards have the same basis, right? Your 3 of swords, your 3 of pentacles, right? 3 of swords piercing the heart, your 3 of pentacles, that's them building that church, right? 3 of wands, the dude standing and looking over the cliff onto the country he's about to conquer. 3 of cups, the 3 women celebrating, giving a toast. The 4 threes of the tarot cards have the same basis. Both the tree of life and the tarot will be found to be in line with the tenets of the Cosmic Doctrine if the seeker meditates seriously on the subjects. Peace, MC Maestro. Good to see you. Have a good weekend. Mothra says, you've been here since the beginning. That's why I brought up spirit, individuality, etc. But clearly this deals with the very primordial level of my being. I love this shit. Yes, absolutely, right? Absolutely. Because even though I will say boldly, you've been here since the beginning, I didn't say your spirit or your soul or your body, because none of those things are you either. That's the big challenge, right? To answer the question, what are you? That's the work. That's the work. Not knowing what candle to use, but having an understanding of the question, of the answer to the question, who are you? What are you? That's what we have to know. Because if you don't have an answer for that question, you're going to default to, I am my body and I am the things that I think about and I am the emotions that I feel, which is offensively incorrect. But yeah, what you are has been here before bodies were a thing, before emotions were a thing, before thoughts were a thing, before souls and spirits were a thing. DYOF, greetings. The divine sparks and the great entity that is the logos of our system have a common origin in their prime cosmic atoms, which derive from the great unmanifest. These prime atoms of a divine spark before that spark comes under the logoidal influence can be called the seed atom. Seed atom. See, there's a reason why the sun is so central to our existence. There's a reason why the sun, what we call the sun, is crucial to life as we know it, because we are an expression of it. It is our soul. We all share the same damn soul. That's why it's called SOL, soul. It is expressing us, and it's expressing everything else. Zero says, yes, if we don't realize that we always are, and B, that it is behind every realization we think we are, we still beyond something. Absolutely. Absolutely. If you stand for nothing, you fall for anything. That's what my dad used to say. Stand for nothing, you fall for anything. And if you don't know who and what you are, then you'll jump on the next thing that sounds exciting. Whether we was kings, or we was gods, or we was chaos, or whatever label, whatever empty title you want to give yourself. And again, like I said, it's not something I can tell you. It's not something that you can read in a book and figure it out. Everything is pointing to it, but the things that are pointing are not it, right? Everything's pointing to it, but if you stop and look at the fingers pointing, you're going to miss it. Framestar Film says the three mother letters. This knowledge has the power to both imprison you and liberate you. Exactly. Exactly. Mother is such a scary concept in Kabbalah. What a scary thing is mother, is Bina, is divine feminine. Terrifying. Enter that womb if you want to. The terrible gates of birth and death. Anyways, play around if you want to. Mess around and forget everything. So about the seed atoms, what did she say? She said these prime atoms of a divine spark, before that spark comes under the logoidal influence, can be called the seed atoms. This seed atom refers to the cosmos, and its difference from the seed atom mentioned at the end of chapter 12 is plain. There's a continuity of development from the prime atom formed as described in the early chapters to the divine spark in each one of us. So we've got this prime atom that has bounced around all of existence, collecting information from every conceivable corner of reality and non-reality from the beginning of time and space. And then there's the divine spark, which is each one of us. And there is a relationship between that. She said there is a continuity of development from the prime atom, formed as described in the early chapters, to the divine spark in each one of us. Just as the great entity has evolved from the 10-sided or traveling atom of the cosmos, which itself evolved from the prime atom, so have the divine sparks evolved from certain of the less complex atoms brought into the wake of the traveling atom or great entity, out of whose concepts the great entity has created and projected its universe. The difference at this point between a great entity and a divine spark is one of degree, but not one of kind. For the great entity has experience of all the rays, but the divine spark has experience of only one ray. Both have experience of all the planes. Hmm. Hmm. Certain of the atoms brought over from the cosmos to the universe, and remember, the cosmos is the greater uh, totality of reality. The universe is our specific solar system and the dream of our sun. That's what the universe is. The cosmos is the bigger picture that even our sun's a part of. In other words, the cosmos can be seen as the macrocosm. The universe can be seen as the microcosm in relation to each other. So, certain of the atoms brought over from the cosmos to the universe by the work of the great entity became the traveling atoms of the universe. They are not as complex as the great entity, but are too complex to settle down upon a plane of manifestation, and they return to the center. These atoms brought over by the great entity, which become the divine sparks, are those which, in their journeying to the center, have their track in space impressed with the logoidal image and influence. I remember the track in space, right? Everything that moves through the cosmos, it kind of leaves a groove, right? It almost like if you walk through the snow, you're leaving footprints. Well, everything that moves through existence carves a path, carves a track, and your data is tracked along that, or the data of the thing that's moving is tracked. So the cosmos is this web of grooves and tracks in space, trails and pathways. Now, the thing is, if one uh, point of consciousness moves through space and leaves a track, a new point of consciousness can slip into that track and follow and become developed in the same pattern, right? And this, to think about this practically, this is why all trees of a certain species always look the same and produce the same type of leaves, the same type of fruit, and the same type of acorns and seeds and stuff, because that consciousness is being squeezed through the same groove in space and time. That's why you and people in your family look similar, right? Because you're sharing the uh, features of the people who came before you and carved out a groove in space and time. You call it genetics. So you have the same nose and eyes and lips and mannerisms as people in your family. You're flowing through this groove in space. I used to call it an etheric pattern. Doesn't matter what you call it. This is a concept. Things follow these grooves, and there are collections of grooves. There are some that are worlds apart. But this, and again, this is where we talked about these primordial forces of the lords of flame, the lords of mind, and all this other stuff. That's what they were doing. They were carved. That's what I mean. They were carving reality. They were shaping the laws and the rules. They were setting all these things up. So let's go back. Certain of the atoms brought over from the cosmos, which is the greater existence, to the universe, which is our specific solar system. Certain atoms brought over by the work of the great entity become the traveling atoms of the universe. Again, that's the solar system. They are not as complex as the great entity, but are too complex to settle down upon a plane of manifestation, and they return to the center. These atoms brought over by the great entity, which become the divine sparks, are those which, in their journeying to the center, have their track in space impressed with the logoidal image and influence. Thereafter, these divine sparks became conditioned by the logoidal consciousness until the cycle is completed and they become freed from this influence and return to their original nucleus of being as seed atoms. So they stay here, right? They kind of get caught in this solar system, and basically they are impressed upon by the consciousness of, by the dreamer of this reality, right? The entity that expresses the sun. And they are, all the data of this dreamer is pressed upon these traveling atoms. Until they literally learn everything that our sun has to teach. And only at that point do they realize, hey, we don't belong here. And they expand outward. They are freed from that influence and return to their original nucleus. Because remember, that's the whole thing about these traveling atoms. They travel and they collect data. They collect it until they have collected all possible data. Then they return to the center of the cosmos. So they happen to be, it would stand to reason that they are, quote unquote, trapped within this solar system so that they can learn everything that this solar system has to teach. And once they're ready, they leave. That's how I'm interpreting that paragraph based on what I've understood in the rest of this book. There are therefore two ways of considering the divine spark. You may look at it from the point of view of the cosmos or from the point of view of the solar logoidal evolution. So two ways of considering the divine spark: from the cosmos at large or from the solar system, from the dreamer. Oops. Exactly. Mothra says, I see why this book is so dense. She's literally pulling info from beyond Kether. There's probably very few authors who have done this. It also means we are only ready for this info now. Exactly. Exactly. No accidents, I suppose. Flashing a little Dion there. No accidents, I suppose. Okay, where were we? There are therefore two ways of considering the divine spark. You may look at it from the point of view of the cosmos or from the point of view of the solar logoidal evolution. But in reality, the divine spark is one thing having its origin in the unmanifest from which it derives its existence and energy. Its origin is in the unmanifest, not from the manifest. It don't even belong here. So it's not dependent on this reality. The divine spark does not derive from the solar logos, but is conditioned by the evolution of the solar logos. So these divine sparks, right? This divine spark, it's not from this reality. It's not from this solar system. It's not from this dream. It's not from this matrix. It's not from here. However, it is conditioned by what's happening here. It's conditioned by the evolution of this dream, of this matrix, of the solar logos, by the dreamer. It's shaped, it's influenced, it's learning. It is conditioned by the evolution of the solar logos until the cycle of its solar development is completed. This takes place when the individuality, right, your higher self, this takes place when the individuality, as a result of certain evolutionary processes in the solar logoidal jurisdiction, comes to the point where it need no longer stay in that jurisdiction, but is able to recognize its own true being. That's why I said what I said earlier. These traveling atoms, right? They're here. They're not from here. They're not of this place. Yet they have to spend time here learning and being impressed upon by the dreamer, by the simulation. And it's only when they've collected all possible, well, I should say enough information to the point that they fully and truly realize, hey, I don't belong here. And see, this is a pattern I'm seeing, right? This is the pattern I'm seeing, even with enlightenment. It's not about you learn something and become enlightened. Enlightenment is when you truly realize this place has nothing to do with you and you naturally leave. You naturally float away. You get up out of here. Can you imagine being like 35 years old, sitting in first grade, and the teacher's teaching you some basic shit, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I don't belong here. You just get up and leave, right? You don't raise your hand and ask if you can go to the bathroom. Like, you literally just stand up and walk out. Like, what the fuck? It happens in a flash. That's what enlightenment is. That's what liberation is. It was not that the teacher was teaching the ABCs and you suddenly got it. Oh, ABC, 1, 2, 3. I don't belong. No, it's not like that. It's a sudden trigger that happens and you see everything. And it's like, wow, this is not the, I'm not supposed to be here at all. This is, I mean, a little ridiculous. Get up and go to the bar and take a shot. Or do what else a 35-year-old does. But certainly not play with them little plastic gummy bears. Maybe the metaphor landed. The divine spark does not derive from the solar logos, but is conditioned by the evolution of the solar logos until the cycle of its solar development is completed. This takes place when the individuality, as a result of certain evolutionary processes in the solar logoidal jurisdiction, comes to the point where it need no longer stay in that jurisdiction, but is able to recognize its own true being. At that point, it is as though the outer development of the divine spark drops away from it, and it becomes again purely a seed atom, to which the individuality thenceforward owes its allegiance. Damn, you stand up, and now the teacher has to do what you tell her to do. It says here, at that point, it's as though the outer development of that divine spark drops away from it. Now I'm asking what the point was even being here in the first place. But all that outer development drops away from it. And it becomes again purely a seed atom, to which the individuality, this higher self, thenceforward owes its allegiance. Wow. Wow. Or another metaphor, right? This man's working at McDonald's, right? Ringing people up at the window. They yelling at him and throwing shit at him. And he got to run and get the fries and flip the burger. And he got to do all this work. And then suddenly he realizes, wait a minute, I'm the CEO of this place. I'm the CEO. And as soon as he has that realization, and the crazy part is, the manager probably knew this. Everybody probably knew that already. But the moment that he wakes up, now suddenly the place belongs to him and everyone must do what he says. He could shut the whole place down right then and there if he wanted to. He could shut it down. He could tell everybody to go home, unplug everything, cash it all in, and go open up shop somewhere else or whatever, right? It's like that. It's like he suddenly realizes. It wasn't an angry customer. It wasn't getting upset, or I mean, who knows what it was? Doesn't matter. What matters is that he suddenly realizes, wait a minute, right? And all the little lessons that the manager was trying to teach him, and all the little tricks that the Employees are trying to show them all that falls away because it doesn't matter. I'm the CEO of this place. This is but one of several establishments that I control. Yeah, that's right. You better walk away because I'm going to burn this motherfucker down. King Kong ain't got shit on me. I'm the police. I'll run shit here. You just live here. In a flash. Exactly that. Coop TGS says, I wonder if we find ourselves here because attention gets fixed on elemental intelligence instead of seed self. And awakening is the same process in reverse. I'm willing to wager that that is exactly the issue. Now, again, it's easier said than done, but I'm pretty certain that that is the actual issue. Right? And that's just like the metaphor with the CEO making the fries and running the window as the 35-year-old grown adult sitting in that first grade class. And they letting them sit there too, teaching them, grading them, telling him he pronounced the word wrong and everything. And he's focused on that experience. But the second that the truth is realized, everything goes out the window. Ain't no asking permission, ain't no raising your hand, ain't no, can I clock out? What? I could shut this place down if I wanted to. And look at that, look at this one line, right? The outer development of the divine spark drops away from it, and it becomes again purely a seed atom to which the individuality, the higher self, thenceforward owes its allegiance. Not only does the illusion end, but in a way, everything becomes reversed. Knock down the hall pass on the way out, right? I'm taking a handful of fries on my way out. Thus, at that stage, the divine spark, being freed from the limiting influences of solar evolution, gives rise to that state of perfect freedom within the individuality, the state of spaceless and timeless existence. We call that consciousness. Perfect freedom, right? Perfect freedom. See, obviously, this is a watered down human style metaphor. But when you suddenly wake up as that 35-year old man in that first grade classroom, what do? You sit down and wait for the teacher to finish her lesson? Do you raise your hand? Hey, can I leave? I don't belong. Do you ask? Do you ask permission? What do you do when you suddenly realize you're the CEO and you've been cooking fries? Do you finish that order with that angry customer in the window? Got your manager breathing down your neck? What? Listen here, homeboy. So expand that metaphor, right? When you wake up, when you wake up, you're gonna ask. You're gonna quietly, silently. Let me get my affairs in order before I sin. Let me go tell my mother goodbye. There was never a mother. Rosa Flame says, Travis, then I'm wondering what would you say as to the reason all of us can grasp that on one level, but not the level you're describing of I'm out this piece. Knowing versus knowing. I would say we haven't grasped it. Like, there's different layers of the self. The self has to grasp it, not the mind, not the conscious mind and ego. Because look, the conscious mind and ego will take this, start dressing differently, and make a whole YouTube channel about this, right? You got to understand, I'm the CEO of this establishment, right? And do some human shit with it. Would you say that that person has grasped it? I wouldn't. I would say that that person has heard some words and attributed meaning to it and continued doing the same shit. I would say we have not grasped it. We haven't grasped it. The words make sense to our conscious mind, but it must penetrate deeper. The words, like I said, right? All around us are arrows and fingers pointing to the truth. But the truth is not the arrow or the finger. Those words aren't even true. But it's pointing to something. And the work is grasping what's being pointed at. So yeah, all when you say all of us can grasp that on one level, we're not grasping it. We're just seeing the fingers pointing to something. That's what that is. We're all seeing the words that are arrows and fingers pointing to something. We're still looking at the fingers and the arrows though. And we grasp it in stages too. Like if you keep your mind fixated on it, it'll start becoming clearer and I mean that's many of us here in this chat, you know what I'm saying? Over time, we stop being so concerned with shit that don't matter because we're realizing that it doesn't matter, right? There's certain things that we used to have on our minds 5 years ago, 3 years ago, hell, last year, that don't matter because we know better now. It happens gradually if you stay fixated on it. To be honest with me, like if it don't concern this information, I don't care, right? I haven't I haven't looked at a single Epstein file. I don't care. It doesn't it you, like there's certain things that I would say in the past I would have been concerned with, but now like who gives a shit what's happening in the world? I don't fucking care. It don't have nothing to do with me. Nothing in this world that's happening. If it don't got nothing to do with this, oh, the stock market and another pandemic and, or whatever. I don't know. I don't even know what's the hot topic right now. It'll pass and something will take its place, as it has been doing for as long as we can remember. Oh well. Oh well. Daryl said you just say see ya and leave. Exactly. Hell, I might not even say nothing. I might just get up and go. I might jump out the window and fly away. I like that last line. Cybernet says the world is the most seductive force we know. Most will bend and or break under its machinations. That's why the elder yogis say, when you see the gods, ignore and press on. Hoop TGS says, Rose, I heard a guru mention that there is a transcendence of the personal ego, and then must come transcendence of the cosmic ego. Sheesh. Cybernet says, therefore, the material and immediate needs and desires will become most folks' first target as soon as they acquire some degree of power. Then we know all too well how that rabbit hole flows. Yeah, and that's the natural pipeline, right? That's the natural pipeline. And there's somewhat of a spiritual selection process. Some people expand past that, and some people stay there. Hell, me first getting into magic and evocation was about fulfilling my immediate needs. I'm trying to manifest some money. I'm trying to manifest some ass. I'm trying to manifest a better living condition, right? It starts out that way for everybody. But eventually you realize just how empty the things are that you're trying to manifest, because it's not the things, it's an inner thing, right? It's a personality thing. And once you start to fix the personality thing, there is no desire to manifest, you know. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There is a pipeline, a rabbit hole, so to speak. Yeah, Micah says the more one focuses or thinks about this or that darker aspect, the more they become subject to emotional distress. Exactly. We are all addicts to Prakriti. Absolutely. Let's continue. My fellow addicts of Prakriti. Oh, it's almost time for another cup of coffee, ain't it? This is a big ass chapter. I think there's 20 more pages left. Okay. Thus, at that stage, the divine spark, being freed from the limiting influences of solar evolution, gives rise to that state of perfect freedom within the individuality, the state of spaceless and timeless existence consciousness. The great responsibility that then devolves upon the individuality on the right hand path comes from that individuality's now established contact with pure and limitless energy. Ah, the individuality is conditioned only by its degree of realization of this contact as it enters on a phase of creative activity. In very truth, a God. Ah, interesting. So now the higher self, becoming aware of this infinite power that it's now friends with, its capability becomes expanded. The great responsibility that then devolves upon the individuality on the right hand path comes from that individuality's now established contact with pure and limitless energy. The individuality is conditioned only by its degree of realization of this contact as it enters on a phase of creative activity. In very truth, a God. Dang. So only to the degree that your higher self can realize who it's actually dealing with. So yeah, the CEO in McDonald's was actually a better metaphor than the 35-year-old first grader. Because now the store manager, depending on how clearly the store manager understands who this CEO is, right? He might barely realize it, like, oh, this is just a secret boss. Oh, this is just, the guy directly above me. Or if he realizes that, oh, this is the one that's above everybody, right? The individuality is conditioned only by its degree of realization of this contact as it enters on a phase of creative activity. Advanced initiations are concerned with the degrees of contact of the individuality with the inner aspect of the divine spark, the seed atom, and the realizations thereof. The cycle of solar development is governed by the lords of karma, and it includes the working out of the tracks in space left by the karma. Remember, we talked about those tracks in space? When the karma has itself been worked out for the solar development occurs after the track in space of the seed atom has received the logoidal imprint. Thus, until the completion of the solar development, the individuality is not able to bring through pure power without some of the power being diverted to its own needs. So there's this recurring theme of no skipping steps here. There is, of course, a wide range of gradation between the earlier and later phases. But broadly speaking, the earlier are essentially concerned with the gradual bringing of the individuality, your higher self, after preliminary work on the personality, your lower self. Broadly speaking, the earlier are essentially concerned with the gradual bringing of the individuality after preliminary work on the personality into contact with its own true being, the seed atom. Whereas the latter are the true creative work of those who have achieved in cooperation with their brethren. The preliminary work on the personality has to be thoroughly carried out before these phases are entered upon. Okay, so to take it back to my metaphor of the 35-year-old in the first grade classroom, we could even say that he isn't just some adult in first grade. He's like the person who is in control of all the school systems in the state, right? Someone far above the teacher. I don't know the correct title. Is it like superintendent or something? I don't know. But what she's saying here so far that I'm interpreting is that there are levels of karma that still have to be worked out, right? It isn't just that suddenly when this seed spark awakens, the seed atom awakens, isn't like everything is just hunky dory. It is hunky dory for the seed atom. However, for everyone else, for this higher self, for this individuality, it still has to go through its lessons and its personal evolution. Now, assuming that its personal evolution has been worked out, once that seed atom awakens, now they can work together with an extreme amount of influence on reality, assuming that that higher self has reached its topmost expression. It's done all of its work. And there's two kinds of relationships that can happen: one where the higher self is not finished with its evolution, and one where it is finished. If the higher self is closer to finishing up its evolution and this seed atom awakens, now we're in store for some true creative work, the type of work that can change reality itself. The inanimate atoms and the divine sparks have a common origin in the great unmanifest. They have both been brought over by the great entity, which is our solar logos. And from the aggregate of their conceptions, of their own images, the great entity has projected its universe. Thank you, Mothra. Slap that like button if you haven't slapped that like button. Absolutely. 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 Everything that has life in the universe derives that life from its own seed atom. It is the aim of the solar evolution to unite eventually the atoms of its universe with their seed atoms in the cosmos. It has been stated that there is a difference of degree, but not of kind, between the traveling atoms of a universe and that universe's logos. Similarly, there is a difference of degree, but not of kind, between a traveling atom and an inanimate atom. Only the more evolved of the cosmic atoms brought over by the great entity become traveling atoms in its universe at the beginning of the solar evolution and received the logoidal impress on their tracks in space. These, not including the first three swarms, which are different, relate to the human evolution, and among them are differences in degree of development caused by factors inherent in their makeup. The inanimate atoms are less evolved than the traveling atoms and receive the logoidal impress during the solar evolution according to their degree of development because being in and of the solar universe, their concepts having been used to create it, they are continually being bathed in the logoidal influences and slowly absorb them. In this way, we get the oversouls of plant and animal life. Aww. These oversouls deriving from the inanimate atoms, which are gradually acquiring a logoidal impress. Interesting. The basic sound of a human being is implicit in the development of a divine spark. The logoidal impress can be more accurately conceived of as a sound vibration than a picture concept. Neat. The blueprint isn't a picture, it's a vibration. That's kind of cool. Does anybody here remember which of the five senses correspond with the Akash element? Which of the five senses corresponds with the Akash element? The basic sound of a human being is implicit in the development of a divine spark. The logoidal impress can be more accurately conceived of as a sound vibration than a picture concept. This idea of primal or basic sound found was behind the ancient teachings of number and numerical values. Sound implies rhythm and vibration. That aspect of the Trinity, of the Logos, known as love, the love aspect, is the part chiefly at work in the imprinting of the impress. The higher teaching of the churches is inspired by this. Hmm. Faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. Ain't that a Bible verse? Ain't that a Bible verse? The Bible says, Jesus, 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 Jesus. Jesus, 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 Jesus. Oh, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. It's been a while since I heard that.
I'm the Virgin Mary. I'm walking around this motherfucker and had none in 500 years. Oh, Jesus. Oh, Lord Jesus. Oh, 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 Jesus. Well, let's see what the fuck the Virgin Mary does.
Let's see what the fuck the Virgin Mary does. Oh, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. The three primary swarms were projected into manifestation, each under an impulse from one of the prime aspects of the Logos, derived from one of the primary rings. These primary swarms are set apart from the succeeding swarms and are of a different degree. The swarms that followed them developed under the influence of the Logos, plus the three primary swarms. The Lords of Flame, Form, and Mind. They are therefore under the influence of the three cosmic rings, as were the three primary swarms. But also, since the Logos reacts to the 12 cosmic rays, these latter swarms are characterized by the influence of the rays predominant at the time they received their logoidal impulse to go forth. Therefore, the great phases of evolution between the sending forth of fresh swarms are governed by the influences from the 12 cosmic rays. This has reference to the houses of the cosmic zodiac and to the precession of the equinoxes. Yeah, Pig, you will. That's most definitely a place where you will find expressive behavior like that for sure. I would imagine that's probably most common. Those whose energies these phases and typify them, those who energize these phases and typify them are ray exemplars. They stand, so to speak, between the zodiac and the phases and reflect the zodiacal influences, acting in a sense as cosmic mediators. These influences then act upon the planetary beings. Ooh, low battery. I better change it soon. There are two of the ancient god forms which can be called easily to mind as being readily alignable with the essential self. Most other god forms being representative of particular aspects, cosmic or universal. These two god forms are Horus and Eros. Horus and Eros. Of them, the former could stand for the divine spark, the latter for the seed atom. For all practical purposes, we could say they stand for the outer and inner aspects of the seed atom, respectively. This supernal Eros is far removed from the popular conception which identifies him with Cupid. He represents here the essence of man, which is eros plus anteros, and springs from the cosmic egg, like the philosophic concept of that eros, who was one of the earliest of the Greek gods. This cosmogenic eros was the earliest force bringing order out of chaos, and he presided at the council of the gods and rules over the minds of gods and men. He was one of the gods of the Samothracian mysteries. Oh, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. The star Sirius has always been held in esoteric teachings to have much influence on solar evolution. Astronomically speaking, of course, the position in space of Sirius is far outside the solar system. But from a cosmic standpoint, Sirius and many other stars condition the solar logos. And since the solar logos is itself conditioner of and conditioned by its universe, the influences of Sirius and other stars are transmuted correspondingly before being communicated to the universe. Therefore, in the purely esoteric sense, stars in general, and Sirius in particular, because of its special influence, can be considered in relation to solar evolution more, especially those which, like Sirius, have had a marked effect on it. The individual, however, must have completed the cycle of solar development before he can experience the pure influence of Sirius or other stars. All right, Chicano 22. Peace, peace. Peace, peace, my friend. Love you too. Real or unreal? Coop TGS says, if I remember correctly, Theosophy speaks of a root atom and a seed atom. Could be the same concept. I think Bobby said in Egypt, sun worship was originally worship of Sirius. Orthodox science studies the materials of which the body of the earth is made and their composition. Orthodox science studies the materials of which the body of the earth is made and their composition. But the deeps of the inner earth that make up the planetary being is what is most important to esoteric studies. It can be helpful to think of the earth rather as a planet, a globe in the solar system, than as the world, and a development brought about by many civilizations to one of which we now belong. It can be helpful to think of the earth rather as a planet, a globe in the solar system, than as the world, and a development brought about by many civilizations to one of which we now belong. That which sustained and nurtured those civilizations is the planetary being. This tremendous force is sometimes personalized as the Mother Earth, the Earth Mother. But personalization or no, all should be aware of the gigantic force involved and how they are beholden to it. The archangelic guide assigned to the planetary being might be considered to supply higher aspects to it, corresponding to the intellectual principle in man. The names of these archangelic guides are known traditionally, can be found in standard works of reference, such as the mystical Kabbalah. Oh, love that self promotion there. Sage Page, peace and greetings. Welcome to the live stream. Glad you could catch it. Pig says, I just wish I had friends who understand me. No one understands esoterica. They all just act like robots and don't have anything meaningful to say because they never thought a thought before. It's to be expected, right? That's most definitely to be expected. This type of information is not, has never been, and will never be um, palatable to the masses, to the common individual. That's not what this is for. This type of information is not delicious to the common person. It takes a lot of inner development for information like this to catch your attention and hold your attention. You have to have gone through sufficient inner sophistication over lifetimes for this type of information to hold your attention. And because this is true, being involved in esoteric studies also has the side requirement of developing a sense of self-sufficient social life. Developing, the ability to walk alone and be happy with that. Each planet has within it the principles of a universe, as indeed has the atom, so that the group soul of the planet's life comes through in aspects somewhat analogous to the three aspects of the logos. There is something in the aspect of love, of wisdom, and of power in each planet. Love, wisdom, and power. That's the three, the top three. Planets have had their leaders who have shown forth certain principles by their conditions of life, even as there have been teachers who did this for the guidance of mankind. These planetary aspects affected certain sections of the human race, for they affected the life swarms as they came down. Thus, according to the aspects prevalent on certain planets, which were in contact with man, as he then was, so did a particular swarm receive a conditioning. You're about to receive a conditioning, good fellow. Cruising for a bruising. You're petitioning for a conditioning. These great stresses of planetary substance. Ooh, change the battery. Oh, I guess that's time. Give me a sec. I gotta change the battery. And in the meantime, I'm gonna grab myself another cup of coffee. We'll take a quick break. Give me a chance to replace this battery. Replace the battery. Battery replacement. Hang tight. Get us from the battery. Battery, 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 battery. Right, just a moment. Just a moment. Almost ready. $11:11. Right on time. Right on time. 11:11. Battery. Miranda blend sounds plenty nice. Go with the Starbucks coffee. All right, back to it. Back to it. So we talked about the star Sirius. Okay, we were over here. These great stresses of planetary substance have much influence both in their own sphere and on the Earth. Because when the Earth was, so to speak, beginning its course in the heavens, various influences and substances from different planets penetrated the then empty and uncoordinated mass, which became the Earth. Void and darkness covered the face of the Earth. The empty and uncoordinated mass which became the Earth. These stresses have left their mark on the Earth's structure and innermost nature and account sometimes for disturbances of one kind or another. Earthquakes, for example, where there is still a link between certain substances in the Earth and the corresponding substances in some other planet, and the two activate each other. They galvanize, right, Framestar? The two activate each other, and reactions are set up in both. That is largely the basis of more accurate side of astrology. But it is too intricate and too remote for most today to study deeply or use as a basis of assessment. Trey saved. Peace, peace. It's been a while since I've caught a live. Tree, trap, peace. Greetings, man. Greetings. Hope you're having a good night. Hope you're having a good night. We still doing the music, right? We still doing the music, right? We still wielding the cyclomancy, right? In very early days, the most advanced among the priesthood knew about the stellar and planetary stresses and the Earth's magnetism, and on that knowledge built a system of which, indeed, something remains, though the bases of the system have been forgotten. There are people on the Earth whose psychic faculty can be stirred by such stresses. Some people, for example, are sensitive to earthquakes or atmospheric pressures in a way others are not. Such people have in their inner makeup some of the stresses corresponding to those of the particular planet which is disturbing the Earth. Certain planets influence the water, fire, air, and earth conditions of the Earth by acting on the Earth's aura. That's huge, man. And it sucks that that's a science that's largely lost, but that's a very interesting concept, right? That there are ingredients that make up the Earth that come from the same place as the ingredients that make up the other planets. And whenever that place moves or shifts in a certain way, all of its ingredients shift too. And that can be the cause of some of the things that we experience on our planet. And was also the basis of original astrology. The underlying principle is that of the unity of all. The Earth is not unique. It should be considered for what it is, one of the bodies in the solar system, which has passed through states and conditions which have gradually condensed into what we call the Earth, but which have passed down from the moon, Venus, Saturn, and other planets. The planetary beings can be considered in one way as the group souls of the planets, and may be given the visual imagination a definite form, as indeed in ancient days was done. Out of these planetary beings, as they affected the mind and character of man, were later evolved by vision and imagination into astral forms, the forces known to mythology. There is therefore a strong link between planetary beings and the appropriate god forms, as is studied by some even today. At the end of evolutions, planets change over. At the end of evolutions, planets change over, and different planets go into action during the succeeding evolution, so that the subject of astrology at the present day has to contend with difficulties that are practically insurmountable. There is much to be learnt about the life swarms, and the way in which their coming down affects humanity generally in the present. All those ancient happenings and developments must be included in any estimation of the condition of man and his development. Check this out. During the various historical periods, certain planetary forces, for planetary forces is a more accurate description than planets, During the various historical periods, certain planetary forces influenced the Earth, each according to its special nature. When these forces are brought to bear again in their turn, they bring to the surface conditions corresponding to their nature. They bring them about in the Earth. Although we have used the term planetary forces, we include also certain stellar forces working through the solar jurisdiction, such as the signs of the zodiac. But that subject is too vast to be dealt with in detail now. Bear in mind, however, the sign of Gemini. Shout out to the Gemini, like myself. Bear in mind, however, the sign of Gemini and for the forces signified by that sign influenced Atlantis and will influence Earth again later in the present age. Now that we found love, what are we gonna do with it? Bear in mind, however, the sign of Gemini, for the forces signified by that sign, influenced Atlantis and will influence Earth again later in the present age. The stars are set in configurations somewhat similar to those which influenced the last days of Atlantis. Oh, man. Certain major planetary forces and signs are influencing mankind again. And though the combinations are different, there is something of the same kind of inner condition. The combinations are different, but there is something of a similar inner condition. And the world, though not deluged by a water cataclysm, is full of clashes and strife of various kinds. She's definitely right about that. Let us consider the second swarm, the life wave of those great regents of the logos we call the lords of form. They might also be called the builders, for through them all form, all shape is developed. The shape that covers or encases the life consciousness is made by the builders to hold that life for a time, sufficient for the life to react as needed to the stresses of a sphere, on which it is after which the life withdraws to another condition, leaving the form to decompose into the elements of the sphere. This is one of the earliest conceptions of death, so that the lords of form are also the gods of death. Where there is death on a large scale, especially death on a group scale, as in war, hint, hint, right now, the lords of form are intimately concerned, for then the whole planet as it were, shaken, and its planetary forces need reconstruction. The lords of form work with group souls more than with individuals. But where a great teacher is instructing mankind, especially if the teaching concerns human evolution, the lords of form are at work adapting the planetary matter to the new and greater concept of life and evolution being brought through. Let me make a quick timeout here. So, for those of you who are in my Goetia class, right, we're now encroaching upon the subject of the legions. And one of the things that I stated about the legions is where most people think that you zoom in to find legions, right? You think you got to zoom into the spirit and you'll see that he commands these armies and these legions. Well, my suggestion was actually to zoom out, because you'll find that these legions actually frame the individual spirits. Um, I would like for you to take what she said here and what I just said into consideration. She said here the lords of form work with group souls more than with individuals. And it seems to me that when we're dealing with these legions, we're dealing with forces that actually build and construct the negative space of the goetic entity. That's just for the goetic students. Think in the opposite direction than is typically suggested. But back to this quote. The Lords of Form work with group souls more than with individuals. But where a great teacher is instructing mankind, especially if the teaching concerns human evolution, the Lords of Form are at work adapting the planetary matter to the new and greater concept of life and evolution being brought through. When the Christ, using the body of Jesus of Nazareth, nice, strongly influenced the planet Earth, there were very definite, though perhaps incalculable, changes in the actual lines of the Earth. These were not observable by science, perhaps, but the locoidal forces changed to another course, so to speak, and the inner forces behind the outer manifestation of the Earth, the etheric structure, began to alter. Form is not confined to outline, but is essentially the whole shape and fills the need of life for a particular shape. The shape does not appear all at once, but grows and develops in the course of evolution, as indeed does the life. All that right there. All that right there. The actual outlines or configurations of cosmic form, such as the stars, planets, and large land masses, are all influenced by the lords of form. The ancients were aware of these very early beings, the lords of form, and their powers, recognizing them as great titanic forces. The Titans, recognizing them as great titanic forces, much connected with fire and metallic ores, and paying homage to them in some of the earliest mysteries. You ever heard of the Titans? These lords are behind the great chemical and alchemical fires. They construct shape by means of mingling and uniting the elemental powers and the metallic and mineral forces of the earth, building structures of every kind, especially planetary structures, for they it was who built the planets. Cool. You will notice that the larger and vaster forms are always the simplest. The great spherical forms are the simplest, but the smaller types increase in complexity. A comparison of the huge prehistoric animals with the present day fauna will show the outer structure of a planet is indeed simple. The lords of form may also be called the lords of rhythm, just as the lords of flame may be called the lords of vibration, because their rhythmical advance and retreat in the building of the universe. That was the beginning of rhythm in the universe, and it set the great rhythms, death, and birth. Thus can these lords be called the lords of death, and they are deeply connected with the ring chaos. They have the great driving force of reaction that will finally break up a form and release the force. They are at work behind the construction of mineral forms, for these are the after developments of the form of the earth, and the life of the planet is within the mineral in a certain way. Got to take your minerals, got to drink those electrolytes, got to eat your sea moss. That's where the life is. All the ancient legends of the great powers of the underworld, the chthonic forces of hammer and anvil, the hammering into shape of great streams of force, the blacksmith gods, deal with the builders and lesser types of elemental beings concerned with work as servants of the lords of form. In a properly worked ritual, the elemental beings build certain forms on the astral, which hold together the stresses of force until other forces take over. Rhythm or repetition is important here, for the frequent building of the forms eventually makes it as near solid as is possible on the astral plane. If you have this book, you better highlight that and read it a couple of times. Here are some clues to a mystery, an applicable mystery in your daily life. Just as the efficient and contacted occultist makes use of the service and cooperation of these builders, so on a much larger scale did the Logos use the powers of the Lords of Form to construct not only the Earth, but also the other planets of its system. All the solar system is interlinked, and reflections of the attributes of other planets will be seen within certain mineral forms of the Earth. Certain precious stones, for instance, are very closely connected with outer planets, other planets, and this connection is not based only on superstition. Similarly, certain metals have a composition which links them to certain basic outlines and substances of other planets, giving not only an analogy with them, but also a certain definite linking. She's giving y'all some heavy correspondence lesson. Maybe it's just for me. An imaginative picture of these great lords of form could be made by visualizing a vast amphitheater under the earth in darkness, filled with red flashes from the depths of the inner earth. Have you ever done any research on the Titans, man? If you've ever done any research on the Titans, this should be screaming something familiar to you. Through this darkness can be heard a hammer on an anvil. Oh, and by the way, she's giving you a path working. So let's start over. An imaginative picture of these great lords of form could be made by visualizing a vast amphitheater under the earth in darkness, filled with red flashes from the depths of the inner earth. Through this darkness can be heard a hammer on an anvil, very faintly at first, for it is very remote. Imagine this sound as coming gradually nearer with a tremendous rhythm, hard, strong, simple. As that rhythmic sound increases in intensity, giant forms gradually begin to build in outline, vast forms, dimly and only partly seen in outline, for they are too huge and too strong to be contained in space as we know it. Feel the etheric intensification behind the dimly discerned form. I had a dream about these things last night, man, and I made sure to write that shit down. I had a dream where I would go into these caves and there were these massive entities that didn't have a physical form, but they had to in order for me to see them, they had to collect pieces of the surroundings. So it's like they weren't made of rock and they weren't made of iron and steel. That's just the stuff that was present that they could make a body or a visual appearance out of. But they were too big for me to see. Yeah, it was pretty cool. And it's interesting that she describes this in this paragraph. Lovely. Within this work, which is being done by the Lords of Form, is a vast patience, which is the content to take millions of years over the task it has set itself so that it can be perfectly done. Every time the great worker returns to a task, he brings a new power derived from the Logos and from the sphere in which he accomplished his last work. And this new power gives a somewhat changed type of force to the work. And ever the great hammer beats and beats and beats through time. building, unbuilding, and building again. Such are the great regents of the logos entrusted with this work. These regents are also the servers of the aspect of the logos behind death and regeneration and rebuilding. We can invoke the lords of form to help us to earn our freedom from form when the time approaches. He who knows and understands death has already overcome it. He is a pupil of the lords of form. We would do well to give a thought to the great builders who have built us and the planetary spheres and who are behind the laws of shape, whether on the astral or physical plane, with whom we can cooperate as agents of the divine. In the mystical Kabbalah, there are references to the archangels of the 10 holy Sephiroth. These are the intelligences of the spheres and are of the first swarm, Lords of Flame. That intelligence works with the archetypal force of the sphere, and under its control are the angels of the sphere, which execute the wishes of the archangels according to their natures. The sphere of Malkuth comprises the mundane plane and the spiritual values which are immediately within dense matter. In fact, the spirit of the atom, and it is under the aegis of the Lord of the Four Elements, we call Sandalphon. This archangel is one to be invoked by those especially who find difficulty in coming to grips with the physical plane, for it is he who has charge of the soul of physical objects. If you could see with your physical vision the exact inner plane condition of a chair or a table, you would observe a very slow vibration and the movement of infinite numbers of tiny molecules holding together the dense matter. Sandalphon is the overlord of all these activities. Those who are so inclined can visualize a great angelic form in the four Kabbalistic colors of Malkuth: pale yellow, olive green, russet red, and black. His vibrationary state rate is low. Oh my gosh. His vibrationary rate is slow and somewhat ponderous, for it belongs to the plane of dense matter and the connecting link of etheric just behind that plane. You want to see the green numbers going up and down like Neo in the Matrix? You're going to have to talk to Sandalphon for that. The sphere of Yasod concerns, among other things, the deeper and remoter etheric substance, the Akasha, as it is sometimes called, as we have mentioned a few times in this stream. Black egg. The black egg. Peace, Patchwork. Patchwork says, hey, long time no see, Travis. Been busy with self-initiation into Western magic through Golden Dawn style magic. Nice, nice. How's that going for you? How's that going for you? The sphere of Yasod concerns, among other things, the deeper and remoter etheric substance, the Akasha, as it is sometimes called. And here the archangel is that known as Gabriel, ruler of many subtle realms in nature and in man. He is the Lord of dreams and of the subtle vibrations of a rare kind, which can touch the clairvoyant faculties of man. In Christianity, he is associated with the Annunciation, partly because he is the mystic announcer, the controller of a special kind of message which can reach to the human mind from far off places. He is, in fact, the angel of Annunciation to many others than Mary. Thus, he is also concerned with sleep, that condition in which the dense body is inactive and the subtle vehicles can escape from it to other planes. It is a large part of his work to induce what is a part of the moon consciousness in man. He tends to draw the soul magnetically, even as a great water power draws, and therefore his influence is a kind of sedative on the physical power. He draws the consciousness from it. He may be pictured as a huge ovoid of silvery substance, with the delicate lilac and violet of Yesod in his wings, and the sound of mighty waters which show his special type of vibration. Maybe that's why I love listening to white noise so much. That's that Gabriel. White noise, pink noise, and green noise specifically. I really like green noise. So it seems like we're going up the middle path, because next is the sphere of Tefereth. The sphere of Tefereth is presided over by the archangel Raphael. He holds the healing and sustaining powers of sunlight. Especially is he concerned with the modern methods of radiant heat and infrared and ultraviolet rays, though these are as yet, from the esoteric standpoint, only in their infancy. Finally, there's the sphere of Kether, whose archangel is Metatron. Anybody ever heard of Metatron? He is said to have been responsible for the glyph of the Tree of Life being given to a man. He works in the great world of cosmic archetypes, and his influence is very rare. It is of the type that comes as a blinding flash of illumination of remote spiritual truths. Thus far, we have dealt with the Sephiroth on the middle pillar of the composite glyph of the Tree of Life and the pillars. Let us now consider the Sephiroth on the two side pillars. Oh, since when did we get into this Kabbalistic breakdown of the archangels? Let me go back just a bit. Okay, so she started talking about the Lords of Flame. So I guess literally the Lords of Flame are the 10 archangels of the tree. I think that's really what she's trying to break down to us here. All right, whatever. The archangel of the sphere of Chokmah is Ratziel. Surely you've heard of Ratziel if you've ever worked with the book, The 72 Angels of Magic, or something else. The archangel of the sphere of Chokmah is Ratziel. He brought through the creative forces in early evolution. It is difficult to formulate in the human mind such beings as either Metatron of Kether or Ratziel, for they are beyond form as we know it, and are incapable of being reduced to a symbol in any way adequate, save perhaps that of great pillars of glory with no fixed outlines. Big asks, so like that glimpse of truth Edward gets from truth in Full Metal Alchemist. Yeah, why not? I would say so. I would say so. So we dealt with Ratziel, we dealt with Metatron, Gabriel, Sandalphon, Raphael. Now we're on the right pillar. We dealt with Ratziel of Hakma, so the next one, of course. Oh, we're going the other way, Bina. The Archangel of the Sphere of Bina, Zafkiel, has been behind the formulation of all the mystic cults that have been sent down from time to time by the inner plane Adepti. He is the Archangel of the Temple and can be envisaged as a vast presence shining with a certain living darkness with a rose-colored glow in the center. Sheesh. The Archangel of Chesed, Zadkiel, has a great influence, giving an assurance of benevolence and the utter calm of eternal security and certainty. He could be of great help to any who are prone to irritation or unbalance of temper. I like how she's randomly giving us a grimoire at the end of this book. The Archangel of Gibera, Camiel, the burner of God, right? The shooter of God. The Archangel of Gibera, Camiel, is the protector of the weak and wronged. He is also the avenging angel who punishes the breakers of law. The Archangel of Netzach, Haniel, is the Archangel of the sphere of harmony and beauty, and especially of interrelationships, whether of spheres, planets, plants, or animal and human life. The great archetype of sympathetic vibration. He can be visualized as shining with a green and golden flame with rose colored light over his head. I like how she did not give a description of Camiel. I noticed in some of these older books, they skip over the details of how to invoke the Mars energies. If you look at, for example, Franz Barton's magical practice of evocation, he will list and break down all of the angels associated with all the spheres except for Mars. He's like, nah, I'm not giving you fuckers that information. No Mars. I assume that was a wise decision. It doesn't take much observation of the human race to consider how that could have been a wise decision. No Mars for you. Figure it out. Figure it out. Last but not least, the Archangel of Hod is Mikael. Hod is the sphere of the magic, and Mikael is its archangel because he holds in control the various evil influences which might escape into the world of men. He is thus a very essential protector in magical formula, especially where the would be practitioners are inexperienced. The ancient Jews listed whole choirs of angels by name, in addition to the great beings here enumerated, and to deal with them would require much time, but you have some indications about 10, so great that they are, each in his own sphere, in charge of the mighty emanations of God. Many who work the tree are inclined to get in touch with the god forces of the Sephiroth, using the god forms of varying pantheons. Whereas, in fact, there are certain archetypal powers of these spheres that are better brought through by use of the archangelic powers and forms. Nadraj Ram, greetings, greetings. Coop TGS says, LOL, Crowley's evocation of Bartzabel is very detailed. Well, I would expect no less from Mr. Crowley. I would expect no less. I didn't say it didn't exist. I just said I noticed how a lot of authors that I've read shy away from that. These are the things we can do without. Come on. I'm talking to you. The teaching on the ray exemplars, especially contained in chapter 20, is of great importance and should be carefully meditated upon. The teaching has been given in a very condensed form, largely owing to the abstruse and difficult nature of the subject, which made it very difficult to put the ideas into adequate expression and language. A good way to obtain an understanding is to think of the great teachers and redeemers of mankind who have guided the various phases of evolution in all conditions, both cosmic and mundane. Think of the mighty influences and conditions that pour through the great currents of force marked by the zodiacs, the greater zodiac of the rays, and the better known lesser zodiac. In these great currents work various types of redemptive force of the logos. Or, to use a more cosmic phrase, the great cosmic force fuses in a special way on a special occasion with what might be called the central aspect of the logos in order the better to influence evolution. As the different types of this great force touch our own evolution, they give off to teach one a definite influence. They act as nourishers, helpers, feeders of that particular divine spark. So it has always been in every phase of our evolution, which would make sense, right? They are our forerunners. They are the ones who have like outlined life as we know it. So of course we're always going to be fed by them. They are the very breast that we drink from. Even if that drinking is an echo, the lips don't actually touch the nipple. You kind of have to lick it off the shirt or something like that. But it's still there. The being of whom we know most is he who is sometimes called the Lord of the Purple Ray. I don't think she's talking about Prince, but let's see. The being whom we know most is he who is sometimes called the Lord of the Purple Ray. He is, so to speak, the group mind of that ray. A great group mind, which is at the super phase, in which it leads on our evolution to its conclusion. The tremendous force of which I speak, the anointed force of the purple ray, has focused to some extent from time to time in some great guide or leader who has come down into the world of men. But the Lord of the Purple Ray is, of course, unique. The intricacy of the subject makes it nearly impossible to give a clear exposition in words alone. Words should be combined with deep contemplation and concentration rather than with only intellectual meditation to gain some beginning of understanding, which will continue to grow. The names and attributes traditionally given to the ray exemplars are of high importance, not only because they give some idea of the being through whom the force focused in this world, but because they can put you in touch with a cosmic power, which exceeds the force of the ray shown when their bearers were in the world. There is naturally a difference between the cosmic Christ and the force of the cosmic Christ focused in an individual, but the latter proceeds from the former and could not manifest without it. The forces of the ray exemplars are very strong and very deep. It can be of great value to link them mentally with those more abstract aspects of the individual, called variously in esotericism the higher self or the individuality, right? I make that distinction almost every single time, but here she says it for you in plain English. Individuality, higher self. The forces of the ray exemplars are very strong and very deep. It can be of great value to link them mentally with those more abstract aspects of the individual, called variously in esotericism the higher self or the individuality. It is possible in suitably prepared conditions for this great force to be contacted in ritual, but great care is needed, as it can have a destructive effect in burning up the dross if it is brought too near the earth plane. Normally, in ritualistic conditions, it acts, to use the symbolism of the Kabbalistic tree of life, it acts from the supernal triangle through Tifereth and does not come below that Sephirah. But on occasion, it may work through to the astral and etheric levels, using a group of people as a basis of manifestation and bringing about repercussions whereby all in that group would be affected, since none could be in contact with such a force and remain unaffected. Did I come into contact with my higher self? I don't know. Well, if you don't know, the answer is probably no. She said, bringing about repercussions whereby all in that group would be affected, since none, that includes you, could be in contact with such a force and remain unaffected. The great ray impinges on the higher self in such a manner as to impel it towards integration with the personality, that's your lower self. And everyone, save those whose integration was well advanced, would feel strong effects which might well be beyond their capacity at that stage to support. When this ray is brought through, the personality has to absorb, in a way, the experience of the higher self, even as the higher self has to absorb the experiences of the personality after physical death. This power of the cosmic Christ can be thought of as that of the higher planes of the sun behind the sun, right? And see, we thought that was a literal physical thing. There's a sun behind the sun. There's two suns in the sky, y'all. The power of the cosmic Christ can be thought of as that of the higher planes of the sun behind the sun, which, so to speak, unites the ray with the logos. The time has now come when the great force as a whole will no longer focus in a single being, but in a group, ever widening until it takes in the whole world. The inner plane body now used by the force can be thought of as something like the highest esoteric conception of Horus. Nevertheless, the beings in whom the force once manifested individually still work in remote planes and maintain in the cosmos the distinctive power with which they once worked on Earth. It is sometimes liable to cause confusion if a ray is associated with a special color. The ray of the cosmic Christ is that of the oversoul of the Lords of Mind. It works through the processional signs of the zodiac and contains within itself a whole spectrum or a set of strata of colors, of which strata, the so-called purple ray, is a stratum. The green ray or green stratum of the same great ray worked through the force described in the legends of Osiris, Orpheus, and Dionysus. It is the true ray of mind and leads the innermost sanctuaries of the mysteries. Man's primal loyalty is to the one unity. Loyalty is hardly the correct word to use, as the one is a law. No other type of existence is possible. In it, we live and move and have our being. It is, however, very necessary to understand that the one, the Logos, is actually the becoming manifest of the unmanifest. It is, however, very necessary to understand that the one, the Logos, is actually the becoming manifest of the unmanifest. It is unity, not because it is concentrated or limited, but because it is undifferentiated. The nucleus of the being of each immortal soul is a nucleus of energy in the unmanifest. The Logos provides the ordered substance of manifestation on all planes, whence we build up the vehicles of manifestation on each plane. Therefore is our manifested existence conditioned thereby, the logoidal nature being the law of existence to which we must submit if we would live harmoniously in manifestation. Right? The nucleus of each living soul does not derive its existence from the logoidal being, but from the unmanifest itself. So look, be in the world, but not of the world. Your soul, your actual primal energy center, that thing at the very, very core of you, right? Not your little face and body, not your thoughts and your personality and the stuff you like and don't like and your memories, none of that stuff. We're going deeper than that, right? Deeper than your spirit and your energy, deeper than anything you can think of, all the way to the very seed, right? The very seed of yourself. Its source is from somewhere so ancient and primordial and far away, right? It has nothing to do with this place whatsoever. You're just here for a good time. I mean, it ain't good all the time, but you're here for a time. And you're here under the jurisdiction of the dreamer, right? Which is that thing in the sky that we see and call the sun. That's its physical manifestation, but it's actually something else. In its dream, it makes itself this blazing hot sphere of white life force. But in its dream, we find ourselves, and here we are shaped with a mental body and an astral body and an etheric body and a physical body and ideas and likes and dislikes and personalities, right? And I like to dress like this, and you can call me that, but don't call me that. And here's my political opinion. All that stuff is shaped and formed while being here, but none of it is you. In fact, it all belongs to this earth and it belongs to this world. That's why you leave it when you're gone. But check this out. The nucleus of the being of each immortal soul is a nucleus of energy in the unmanifest. Not only is it not here, it really ain't even formed. That's why this is all an illusion. It's a dream within a dream, and probably within another dream. The Logos provides the ordered substance of manifestation. So the Logos, the sun, it literally provides the 5 elements used to create your bodies, right? Your physical body, it's not yours. You had nothing to do with the creation of this body, right? Your mama and your daddy put together the elements and the cells and the instructions and the DNA patterns to create your body. And their parents did the same thing for that, and so on. Like, you didn't do that. And your ideas and your personality, you didn't create that. Somebody, the patterns of reality, how already had these pieces in place, and you just chose, okay, I like this, and I like that, and I don't like that. You just chose a bunch of stuff that already existed and assembled it to yourself, right? That's your personality. This is your thought. You think in a language that was created before you got here. You didn't create English. You didn't create your name. You didn't create where you live. Nothing. All this stuff belongs to this place. You didn't create your emotions. It's only like, what, 10 emotions that exist. And then you just assembled this triggers that emotion, and this triggers that emotion. And I feel this way whenever I experience this with my five senses that I also didn't create. How could you say any of this is you? How could you believe that any of this is you? It's already been here. How can you be so passionate about something that doesn't even exist? Willing to fight friends and family, willing to kill over something that's not even yours. Tripping, big time tripping. The nucleus of the being of each immortal soul is a nucleus of energy in the unmanifest. The logos provides the ordered substance of manifestation on all planes, whence we build up the vehicles of manifestation on each plane. The logos provides that. Therefore is our manifested existence conditioned thereby, the logoidal nature being the law of existence to which we must submit if, right? You don't have to, but you must submit if we would live harmoniously in manifestation. All right? Mothra says, probably only three emotions, LOL, up, down, and centered. Absolutely. And check this twist out. Even that's relative, because what if you were upside down? Down is up and up is down. And that's what I mean by a system. A system it's not about the defined components, but it's about the relativity of the whole thing, right? Because centered, up and down depend on the center. Somebody's center might be depression. Down is truly down for them. But yes, you're absolutely right. It's probably just three. Rajas, Tamas, and Saba. Gotta love it. Had to highlight that. Patrick says, we don't even exist, LOL. We're just the imagination of the Most High. Right? Right? Absolutely. And again, like we stated earlier, those are words that we can intellectually agree upon, but we don't understand it. And only when we do understand it does it start making things happen. The nucleus of each living soul does not derive it. And here's another part, right? She says here, the nucleus of each living soul does not derive its existence. It does not derive its existence from the logoidal being, but from the unmanifest itself. So technically, what you actually are is older than the sun and older than the dreamer, more ancient than the dreamer. You know, like I said, the CEO of McDonald's, they had him working at the window register, frying up the fries, getting yelled at, and then one day he wakes up and realizes who he is. Everything changes immediately. Everything changes immediately. The moment that CEO realizes, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to be in this window cooking fries and dealing with these disgusting customers who are very rude and impatient and entitled. I'm not supposed to be doing this. I'm going to shut this whole establishment down just for the hell of it. The nucleus of each living soul does not derive its existence from the logoidal being, but from the unmanifest itself. However, as man manifests forth in the sphere of the solar logos, man must work in and through its conditions, which are the laws of the logoidal nature. The solar logos is the god of the solar system and gives it its laws. This logos, working through the planetary beings and their archangelic guides, is the source of the differentiated energy manifesting within the bounds of the solar nebula. In brief, the solar logos is the conditioner. The solar logos is the conditioner and sustainer of manifestation in its universe. The great unmanifest is conditioned. There are three titles which might be confusing unless a clear idea of the way in which they are used has been gained. They are 1, the planetary entity, 2, the planetary intelligence or the archangelic intelligence, and 3, the planetary being. All right, so we got the entity, the intelligence, and the being. She's going to break them down right here. Let's start with the planetary entity. The planetary entity is the logoidal idea of the planet, right? The dreamer's idea of the planet, as it is to become in its spiritual sense at the end of the evolution. The concept of this has many symbolic descriptions, such as the kingdom, the New Jerusalem. Does anybody remember in the Bible at the very end in Revelations? They're talking about this future earth, this future kingdom, this New Jerusalem. It's coming down out the sky, and it's got a bunch of jewels and crystals all over the place, and it's shining with its own light from the center. And Jesus is hanging out in the middle, playing kickball with the kids and hacky sack. I don't remember what verse the hacky sack part is, but I'm sure it's in there. The planetary entity is the logoidal idea of the planet as it is to become in its spiritual sense at the end of the evolution. So the final destination of this place. That's what the planetary entity is. Neat that it exists beyond the concept of time, huh? The concept of this has many symbolic descriptions, right? The planetary intelligence or the archangelic intelligence is the archangel appointed to guide the planet during its evolution. That archangel is one of the first swarm. So he came through first and foremost. That assigned to Earth is known in the West as Sandalphon. He is said to have first come into close control of Earth during the Lemurian period, when fire was in a particular manner being introduced into Earth. This archangel, great as he is said to be not quite of the stature of the planetary intelligence of Venus or Mercury. Oh, he's the new guy from our present viewpoint. However, his greatness is such that the distinction to us is largely academic. So, like, technically, it doesn't matter. It's only on paper, the difference. He too is developing and reaching out, so to speak, towards another great force. And this concept is indicated in certain esoteric allegories dealing with the symbolism of marriages. From time to time, great entities from other and more developed planets have been in touch with Sandalphon's planetary work, especially from the planet Venus. What? So our archangel of Earth is having a sneaky link with the archangel of Venus. It makes sense. That does not seem like a surprise to me. They got a little behind the scenes relationship going on. Sandalphon and Hanael. Not surprised. Talking about marriage. All right, so that's the planetary intelligence, right? That would also be called as the archangel, Sandalphon. The planetary entity is the vision of this place in its future and final evolved state. The planetary being is, as it were, a vast elemental composed of the consciousness of each one of its children. So the planetary being is the massive culmination of the elemental consciousness. Let's read that as it is, though. The planetary being is, as it were, a vast elemental composed of the consciousness, using the word in a wide sense, of each one of its children, the children being all the lives upon the earth, humans, beasts, birds, reptiles, fish, insects, etc. That includes cockroaches, y'all, etc. In the great elemental, the planetary being. All these are or should be one. And so they are or should be one in their relationship to each other. It is because that relationship has been shaken broken, and betrayed that so many ills have come to pass. Ooh. It can be assumed that when the kingdom comes, when the logoidal idea of this planet is truly manifested, then indeed all Earth creatures will be one on a certain level. Hmm. All should remember that as developed and developing human beings, they have a great debt to the Earth, who is, in very truth, their mother, their parent. They are made of her substance and live upon her substance, and all that they do here on earth, all that they discover in science, and all that they make in art or industry are also parts of her. But she develops less quickly than her children. Oh, mama's a little slow. She develops less quickly than her children, and it is the duty of her children by their development to aid hers. Therefore, whatsoever you do, let it be not only for your own gain or interest, but also for the gain and keen interest of the planetary being. The more that you do that is consciously shared with this vast elemental parent, the more will those things prosper, not only in her, but in you. There is no thing on earth, no thought brought through to earth which does not concern the planetary being. However, great or lofty, however, unfortunately, mean or base. You have a very great responsibility not only to yourselves and to each other, but also to the great group soul of the earth, the great mass mother of you all. Y'all better be nice to great mama, big mama. The more you are in touch with her, the more will you earn the privilege of the contact with her guiding intelligence. And that intelligence will guide you not only in matters immediately concerning the earth life, but in using such things to pave the way for the future towards the time when the planetary being will become one with the planetary entity. Ooh. So the planetary entity is the future, the planetary being is the past. Neat. Neat. Wow. So yeah, elementals do evolve, man. Elementals evolve into great intelligences. It might be a slow process, but it happens. That's why the magician should take great care in dealing with his elemental spirits, dealing with her entities that she summons. You should take great care in all the spirits that you work with. One day they'll look back upon you as a god or goddess. Pave the way for the future towards the time when the planetary being will become one with the planetary entity. Therefore, help to join these two together. The logoidal concept of the earth, which even if you cannot clearly envisage it, you can to some extent imagine, and the planetary being. And let that purpose unite with your wish to forward evolution and your effort to pass on all that you can of help to the Earth Mother. As all of you develop through the ages, so do you carry this vast parent and her development along with you. When you stray from the right path, so do you lead her astray. And this is a grievous wrong, for it holds the degradation of the planetary being. Oh, now see, it's one thing to fuck yourself up, but to mess up mama's path, come on now. Get it together, man. Get it together. Get yourself right. You know she's a little bit slow. You out here trying to get revenge on somebody because they called you a bad word on the internet. Is that what you're teaching your mother? Is that what you're teaching your Earth mother? To get revenge on somebody who said something bad on the internet to you? Let's get to this final page of this God blessed, amazing work. Be mindful, too, in thinking of the planetary being, to think also of all other stages of life upon her: birds, beasts, insects, elementals, and all forms of life, for to these do you bear relationship. There has been much superstition and sentimentality connected with this divine law of unity. But keep well in mind the great truth of the interrelationship of all when you shed the superstition. Sorry, Mama. I never meant to hurt you. I never meant to make you cry, but tonight I'm cleaning out my closet. One more time, one more time. Do, 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 do. Boom, 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 do, 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 do. Tree Marie, peace and greetings. Welcome, Tree Marie. Good to see you. Good to see you. Cleaning out my closet. I'm sorry, Mama. All right, let's not prolong it longer than it has to be. Be aware of the planetary being as a being of immense age, in which each one of you is, as it were, embedded, and through which you draw your earth life. It could be compared to an enormous beehive with millions of sections, each of which holds a small bee making honey. Be aware, too, of the archangelic intelligence as having tremendous protection. That's Sandalphon, right? Having tremendous protection, love, and devotion for each and every creature on the earth, because each creature is part of the earth, and as being able to guide each one of you, either indirectly through the planetary being, or directly if you have the right approach to him and have earned and maintained the right of direct contact with him. What is said here, however fanciful the expression may appear, is deeply real and worth the intensest consideration. The end. The end. The end. Thank you, first and foremost, so much, Dion Fortune. Thank you so much. We, as a species, are indebted to your great contribution to our knowledge base. And thank you all for being serious students of the real, serious students of the occult. There's a lot of other things that you could most certainly be doing with your time, but as always, I greatly appreciate your attention, your seriousness in this work, and all that good stuff, man. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing and keep the right perspective. All right, keep the right perspective. That's extremely important. If you were to ask me, I believe that the philosopher's stone can be summed up in this one sentence. Are you ready for it? I control the context. That's the philosopher's stone. You got to keep the right perspective. You may have heard somebody once say, maintain your frame, right? That's the philosopher's stone. It don't matter what happens on the outside. What matters is the story you tell yourself based on what happens, because that's what you're going to carry with you. That's what you're going to carry with you. All right, well, there's a million things that I could say to you all, but the main thing I'm going to have to say is good night. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer. Um, as far as the next book, it's probably going to be The Circuit of Force. I'm not sure. Um, I might just go live next Saturday and just chop it up with you all. So don't expect the book study to start next Saturday, but it will be probably Circuit of Force. I guess I can't hide it or deny it anymore. Um, this is mostly Dion Fortune centered book study. I go where the energy and the consciousness is guiding me, man. It's not that there aren't other relevant works out there. It's just that the works of this amazing teacher kind of stand out to me the most. So it's probably where we're going next. Probably where we're going next. Also, it seems that YouTube's starting to kind of crack down a little bit. So I may have to change how I do this. I would hate to put these book studies behind like, a YouTube membership kind of deal, but I'm gonna have to figure something out. Recently, I had ESPN press me with the copyright infringement. They didn't give me any details, but I had to take one of my book studies down. So we're gonna have to figure out a different way to do this. I have a few ideas. Yeah, of all people. And like I said, wouldn't give me any like details as to what was going on. It's just you better take this book study down or we're pressing legal action. And I'm like, whoa, okay. I didn't know that ESPN cared about metaphysical studies, but you're right. That's not a fight that I'm willing to fight. I got other things to focus on. Like I said, I have a few ideas. It's somewhat of a gray area. I've been hashing it out with GPT as far as what I can do. It is a gray area. It's not against the law to do book studies. It's how it's done. That's the main thing. It's how it's done. Right. Mothra says, "Which one you take down? The one you don't see anymore." No reason to be a smartass. Stalking the wild pendulum is no longer with us. I didn't delete it though. I just downloaded it. So what I might do is maybe some kind of Patreon thing and just put all my past book studies on there. Kind of like how the Serious Times dude has all the Bobby Hemmett book studies. But like I said, I'll have to figure out a different way to actually do these book studies. Because I ain't gonna stop. That's for certain. Like I said, it's just how it's done has to change, and it's okay. I get it. Stuff changes. Stuff changes. I tell you one thing that ain't gonna change. I'm here about my father's business. I'm here about my father's business. And you know what? I saved Ladder of Lights too, but that was on the computer that I had that stopped working. I'll get it fixed one day, but something happened with the operating system, and I just could not figure out how to get it back. But again, AI has come out since then, so maybe AI can figure it out for me. But yeah, once again, thank you all so much for being here. This has been a wonderful experience. We will certainly continue. Be on the lookout. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be Circuit of Force by Dion Fortune. But hey, something else might pop up or whatever, right? The collective might call for something. We will see. I'll give you time. Catch you next time. I might go live tomorrow. If not, then you will see me later. Um, Tree Marie, I do have an email to check from you. And yeah, my Goetia class is running its third cycle. So if you're here and you've been wanting to be a part of that, now's the time to sign up. We will be beginning the third cycle very soon. We've got a lot of powerful information, from many different angles. It's not just about what you think it is. A lot of stuff going on. Like I said, we have live sessions at least twice a month where you can ask questions and we can chop it up in person. Contact me if you're interested in that. And I'm going to see y'all next time. One more time, thanks for being here. I love you all. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Thank you so much. I love you. Peace. Ashe to the order of the unicorn. Ashe to the order of the Venus. Oh, wait a minute. I had a slideshow. I completely forgot about that. I had a slideshow for it. So yeah, basically, tonight we reached the end of the Cosmic Doctrine, but the Afterword reminds us that the real work begins after the book is finished. I completely forgot about that. So, final reflections, the Cosmic Doctrine. This closing section reflects on the purpose of the teaching and how they should be understood. It reminds the reader that the doctrine is not meant to be accepted blindly, but used as a training system for consciousness. The doctrine is a training system. Throughout the book, we were specifically warned. These images are designed to train the mind, not to inform it. Not to inform it. To train the mind. And it's most certainly done that with me. I hope it's done that with you. Expanded grasp, reach truths and insights beyond ordinary language. Mental exercise, diagrams, and cosmological descriptions to train the mind. Symbolic language, the cosmology of rings and atoms and rays and great entities should not be taken as literal physics. You guys know that already. Instead, they are symbolic representations of motion, polarity, evolution, consciousness, and the relationship between the planes of existence. The doctrine teaches patterns, not material descriptions. The difficulty of describing higher reality. The Afterword reminds us that higher planes of existence cannot easily be described. Language itself was built to describe the physical world. Trying to describe spiritual reality in ordinary language is compared to trying to describe a rainbow to someone blind. The doctrine therefore uses metaphor, analogy, and symbolic geometry. The living nature of the universe. The misunderstanding. One concern some readers have is that the doctrine seems to reduce God to a mechanical system. The Afterword corrects this misunderstanding. The planes, the reality, right? The higher planes are not mechanical. They are more alive and more complex and more vibrant than anything in the physical world. What appears abstract in theory is actually intensely living experience. So consciousness evolves. This is what this book shows us. The doctrine presents evolution as the development of consciousness. We start with motion. Remember the very beginning, these rings began to stir. They begin to spin. And that motion becomes atoms. And the atoms become whole systems. And whole systems crystallize into minds. And minds crystallize into great entities. And it continues on until you have birds and bees and people and artificial intelligence and whatever is coming after that. Every stage of existence participates in this unfolding awareness. Evolution is therefore not merely biological, it's cosmic. Evolution is psychological and cosmic. Psychism is not the whole story. So the afterword also clarifies this important point. When it comes to psychic perception is only one type of inner awareness. Other faculties are just as important. Intuition allows consciousness to grasp truths that cannot be reasoned out step by step. And this book has a lot of those. It is especially vital among the faculties of inner awareness. The role of the student. The teachings are not meant to produce belief. They're meant to produce expanded perception. So that's what this book is about. It's about producing expanded perception, right? The student is expected to meditate on the diagrams, to reflect on the patterns, and to observe the same laws in psychology and in nature. What happens? Over time, these ideas begin to reorganize how the mind thinks. That's been happening to me. Has it been happening to you? Have the concepts in this book, have the diagrams, the patterns begin to reorganize how your mind thinks? That was the purpose of this text. That was the whole purpose of this text. In fact, that's why she says in the very beginning of this book, these images are designed to train the mind, not to inform the mind. From theory to initiation. The deeper message of the doctrine is not about cosmology, it's about initiation. She's shown so many different examples of how initiation happens, how this crossover of data, lessons, experience, so many different ways that this information can be shared and cause accelerated evolution in an individual. By learning the structure of cosmic evolution, the student begins to understand their own role within that process. You'll come to find that human consciousness becomes a participant in cosmic evolution, not just an observer, especially like what she said at the end. We are all responsible for the evolution of our Mother Earth, this elemental spirit that we call Mother Earth. She's the culmination of all life forms. And she might be a little slow, but you gotta think with all these perspectives and experiences and data. That's a lot of information to keep track of. Maybe it's not that she's slow. Maybe it's that she's thinking in a way that is far beyond what we conceptualize. We won't find Mother Earth driving up to Starbucks to order a latte, but we do find her arranging for this system to remain harmonious. Final insight. The Cosmic Doctrine does not claim to give the final truth about the universe. Instead, it offers a framework for thinking about reality as living, for thinking about reality as evolving, for thinking about reality as conscious, and for thinking about reality as interconnected. The ultimate goal is not knowledge. No. The goal is expanded awareness. And you know that it's expansion that leads us back to unity. The more that you expand, the more that you see that everything is actually one and not separated. In closing, the doctrine invites the reader to see the universe as a vast living intelligence. Human consciousness is one stage within that greater life. Understanding the patterns of cosmic evolution helps us reorganize our place within it. Tree Marie says, "Oh, come on. Mother Earth be loving them Frappuccino." Absolutely, right? Absolutely. With her venti-sized cup. Now, where would she pour it? I have no idea. What is the digestive system of Mother Earth? Understanding the patterns of cosmic evolution helps us recognize our place within it. I think one of the more powerful realizations I got from this book is that your personal specific history goes far beyond incarnation in this physical body. Like when you think about you think about your life as far as you know it. But in truth, what you actually are is older than even the solar system. It's older than the solar system. Like there's a the moment that the universe began to spin, right? The moment things begin to churn and stir up in the cosmos, that was you. And this book has literally traced a this is what I see. It traced a family lineage from that first whirlings and first stirrings all the way to this very moment in time right now of all of us looking at the screen and listening to YouTube or whatever. There's a connection from this point in time all the way to the very beginning. There's an unbroken chain of evolution. So when we talk about you or me or what I am or the truth, it does not start in 2026 in the country that you're in or wherever you're born. What we are goes far back before Earth, before the sun, before the Milky Way, before anything solid, honestly. And you will most definitely return. There's nothing that can stop you from coming home. There's nothing that can stop you from returning to where you came from. Like a mixtape in the toilet swirling. Skinny man. He couldn't believe it, man. He could not believe what Skinny had done.
Hey, Skinny, man. You tell me this shit just fell out your pocket, man. Skinny. Hey, bitch. You tell me this shit fell out your pocket, man.
Hey, man.
Hey, what, man?
You know what you could do.
What can I do, man? You tell me what I can do, man.
Hey, man. Say what, man? Hey. You tell me what I can do. Hey, what, man? Hey, bitch. Hey, bitch. Man. So you don't ever want to be in that moment of disbelief, man. You gotta know what time it is before the clock hits. You gotta know what time it is before the clock hits. Know who you're dealing with. Know your surroundings. Know the situation. And know yourself. Know yourself. Know the truth. Hey. That's the answer, right? That's the answer. Hey. All right. One more. Just because it's been a while, right? If I can find it. There it is.
I was coming off of being in Miami a night of partying. I don't really remember what I was saying. You know what I'm saying?
Would you like a reminder?
Yeah, sure.
Play something.
Hey, yo, listen, I love it all. I love it all, man.
I like when you like this, Daddy.
Where you put my bag?
Daddy, I like when you scrambling and scraping for shit.
No,
I like that.
That was you.
Scrambling.
What? You said, I like when you do it like that, Daddy. When you scrambling and scraping for shit.
Hey, man.
He's like, I don't know what I was talking about.
Hey.
Hey, man. All right, guys and gals. This concludes tonight's session. Hey, man. I love how it's not a definitive yes or no. It's just an answer. Hey. All right. Good job. Give yourself a pat on the back. Round of applause. We did it. Another one. Another jewel in the crown. Another jewel on the crown, right? And let's get back to it. See y'all next time. see y'all next time. Phoenix Wolfette, I'd love to hear about what you've been working on next time. Next time, love to hear some of the developments. Good to see you. All right, so for real this time, this is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. I love you. Peace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.